Okay, good morning, everyone. Nice to see all of you guys here. Welcome to all of you. Welcome to everyone online as well. What we're going to do is start with our meditation, just like we talked about yesterday, where we'll start with the chanting. Then there'll be some guidance. There'll be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're all meditating together. Then we'll come out with the chanting. And then that's where I'll start today's class. This morning, we're going to be spending time on the Eightfold Path. This is where you're going to learn the entire path to enlightenment, including the Four Noble Truths. That's going to take us up to our mid-morning break. And then even after that, we're going to continue with this because it's a pretty detailed teaching. It's a core central teaching that you need to know inside and out, backwards and forwards. So I'm going to take the entire morning to spend time helping you to understand this. Then we're going to take our lunch break. And then when we come back, we'll learn meditation. It's this meditation of breathing, mindfulness meditation, all the ins and outs of how to develop your meditation practice. So if you'd like to join for meditation, make yourself comfortable in whatever position you find comfortable, and you're welcome to join in with the chanting. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanang Abhivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakhato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. 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 Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. สัมมาสัมพุทโธภะคะวาพุทธังภะคะวันตังอะภิวาเทมิ สวากขาโตมหาควตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาควโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะควาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารนังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังโพโตภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. All right, once again, welcome. Good morning. It's nice to see all of you guys. Welcome to our class. Welcome to everyone online as well. Today, we're going to be learning the Eightfold Path, the path for all humans to enlightenment. This is the core central teaching of the Buddha that's going to guide you in training your mind to get to this peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy, where the mind's no longer experiencing any discontent feelings. You would need to know this path inside and out, backwards and forwards, up, down, left, right. You're going to need to learn it multiple times. If this is your first time learning it with me, great. This is your first time to be able to really dive in, but you're going to need to learn it more than one time, either here in the classes, through the live stream, through videos, through books. You're going to really need to penetrate into this deeply. Get to the point where you can actually memorize it word for word for word. If you can deeply understand the teaching of the Eightfold Path, this is what you'll actually be able to practice. If you didn't know what it was and you didn't understand it, you wouldn't be able to practice it. So this might be your first time through learning this, and that's fine, but just keep in mind that you're going to need to learn it more than one time. There's some people here that have learned it with me before, and this might be their second or third or fourth time even learning it. So you're going to need to learn this inside and out. The way to think about the Eightfold Path is you can think about it like a speaker system. If you had a speaker system and you had 8 individual dials and you would like to get a better and better quality sound out of these speakers, you would end up tweaking these dials in order to get it to the point where you get a better and better quality sound out of the speakers. And the same thing is true with the mind. If you dial this into your life closer and closer, you'll see that your mind starts performing better and better and better, and you'll start experiencing more and more improvements in your day-to-day life. You're going to need to gradually implement this into your life. You're not going to be able to learn it today, snap your fingers, and instantly implement it. It's going to take time to gradually bring this into your life and into your mind. When we talk about developing a life practice, this is the life practice that you're working to develop. I'm going to use the original words of the Buddha to be able to help you to understand what this is and bring this into your life in a way that you can practice it in your day-to-day life. It has 8 individual factors: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And then it's organized into 3 different sections: the wisdom section, the moral conduct section, and the mental discipline section. As I mentioned, this is what's going to bring your mind to that enlightened mental state. And then there's other teachings that integrate into this and connect into it. This is the core central teaching. So I'm going to use the original words of the Buddha here to be able to help you understand what he taught, and then I'm going to teach it to you so that you'll understand how to implement it in your day-to-day life. So here's the words of the Buddha on right view. He says, "In what, monks, is right view? It is, monks, the wisdom of discontentedness, the wisdom of the cause of discontentedness, the wisdom of the elimination of discontentedness, and the wisdom of the way of practice leading to the elimination of discontentedness. This is called right view." So here what he's doing is he's pointing to a teaching that's called the Four Noble Truths. Underneath of this line here, I have the top section of the Four Noble Truths. But the Four Noble Truths goes on beyond this. So what I'm doing here is I'm just showing you the connection between the Eightfold Path and the Four Noble Truths, so that you can build confidence that yes, what the Buddha is talking about in the Eightfold Path as right view is the Four Noble Truths. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you the Four Noble Truths so that you can understand what this is. This is where you can have a real breakthrough to understanding the problem in your mind, the cause, the elimination, and the path forward. And in order to understand the Four Noble Truths, you need to first understand the 3 universal truths. These are like building blocks to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. We refer to them as truths because the Buddha knew that they were true. I know that they are true. Other people know that they're true. But in order for you to get the benefit out of this, you need to be able to know that they're true. And that's why, as I mentioned yesterday, you don't believe anything that I share. Don't believe anything that's in books. Don't believe what I'm sharing. Because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You don't have the wisdom to know that it's actually true. You need to be able to learn, examine, and investigate these teachings, to reflect on them, to independently verify whether they're true or false, and then practice them, integrating them into your day-to-day life so that you can actually experience the real results. Remember, the Buddha didn't teach the way the world should be. He's explaining to you the way the world is. And these universal truths and the Four Noble Truths is starting to help you understand the way the world is. And now with that wisdom, you'll be able to navigate the world more peacefully. I'll show you how this works, where I'm going to walk you through the intellectual learning of this. I'll show you how to reflect, and then I'll show you how to practice so that you can actually experience the benefit of cultivation of wisdom and now training your mind to move forward closer and closer to enlightenment. So we'll start with this first one, the universal truth of impermanence. This is where the Buddha is helping you to be able to see that the world around you is constantly changing. There's something called conditioned objects. Conditioned objects, they arise, they change, and they fade away. They are impermanent, meaning not permanent. That things that you see, hear, smell, taste, things that come in contact with the body, and any thoughts or ideas that go through your mind, they're all impermanent. They're constantly changing. These are called conditioned objects. They arise, change, and fade away. Then there's something called unconditioned objects. They don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. They are permanent. The natural laws of existence are unconditioned objects. These are natural laws that have existed all the way from the beginning of time. They will exist till the end of time. They don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. The natural laws of existence is what the Buddha taught. And that's why his teachings are timeless, that what he taught 2,500 years ago is just as applicable today as it was 2,500 years ago, because these natural laws don't change. The enlightened mental state It's unconditioned mind that produces this enlightened mental state. The enlightened mind, it doesn't arise, it doesn't change, and it doesn't fade away. When the mind gets to enlightenment, it is a permanent mental state that you'll be experiencing. So there's conditioned objects, which is explained in the universal truth of impermanence, which arise, change, and fade away. They are impermanent. But then there are unconditioned objects too, like the natural laws of existence and enlightenment itself. These are unconditioned objects. Okay, so this is a little bit of intellectual learning here. What I'm sharing with you is the things in the world around you, everything you can see, hear, smell, taste, that comes in contact with the body and goes through the mind is impermanent. But you don't believe this. You never believe anything. So now you need to be able to independently verify it for yourself. That's where you move into the reflection and you start reflecting on this and try to look at it and see if it's actually true. Because if this is true, you would be able to independently verify it. So you start looking around the world about things you're familiar with to see if you can find something that is permanent. I suggest you start with something that you're very familiar with. You can start with this physical body. Ask yourself, is this body permanent or is it impermanent? Because if this body is permanent, it's been exactly the same your entire life. If this body is impermanent, that means it's been constantly changing. So what would you say? Is this body permanent or impermanent? Impermanent. It's been constantly changing, right? Ever since conception, when the egg and sperm came together in our mom's womb, this body's been constantly changing. Our hair grows, we cut it, we get pimples and moles and freckles and wrinkles. Our hair turns different colors. Our skin complexion changes. We get taller or shorter. We get larger or smaller. This is all constant change with the physical body. What about your relationships? Are your relationships permanent or impermanent? If they're permanent, you've had exactly the same people in your life, your entire life. If they're impermanent, you've had people coming and going in and out of your life. So are your relationships permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Mary says. What about you, Jake? Your relationships are impermanent, right? They're constantly changing. Okay. What about your bank account? Is this permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? It goes up and down and up and down. Some people goes up, up, up. Some goes down, down, down. Constant change with your bank account. What about the weather? Is the weather permanent or impermanent? What is it? Impermanent, right? It's sunny, it's raining. Some places snow and sleet and hail, tornadoes, hurricanes, typhoons. All these things are the weather constantly changing, right? You can go on and on and on like this. And if you need to do that to be able to see the truth about this, then do that. Walk down the street. Look for things that are permanent. If you're walking down the street and you see a crack in the sidewalk, that is impermanence. If you notice that the sidewalk goes up and down, like here in Thailand, you can be walking and you got to walk up the sidewalk and down the sidewalk. This is impermanence. Some streets have sidewalks, some streets don't. That is impermanence. You can look in the temple. We have these wood planks. Some of them are longer or shorter. Some of them are one color. Some are slightly different colors. There was a certain number of people here yesterday. There's a different number here. Different people have shown up, right? This is impermanence. Things are constantly changing in your life. This is a fundamental building block that you need to be able to see very clearly, that everything around you is constantly changing. You're going to need to know this when you get to the Four Noble Truths in order to be able to have this breakthrough to understanding what's going on in your unenlightened mind. Then there's the universal truth of discontentedness. What this is explaining to you the unenlightened mind. Some people refer to this as suffering. I'll explain to you what this is, and then I'm going to circle back and help you to understand why I don't use the word suffering. Because if you've actually studied teachings of the Buddha in other places, you might have seen them refer to this as suffering. In the original text, the Buddha uses the word dukkha. This word dukkha translates to discontent, discontented, or discontentedness. When the Buddha is explaining dukkha, he explains it as three feelings, that there's a pleasant feeling, a painful feeling, and a neither painful nor pleasant. And he explains that this is what the unenlightened mind experiences. They are conditioned feelings, that the mind experiences happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. The mind experiences sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. Then there's these neither painful nor pleasant feelings. For me, I put boredom and loneliness here, but some people say that's really painful for them. So you could put that in the painful category if you like. But shyness is a good example of this. It's not painful. It's not pleasant. It's neither painful nor pleasant. Or think about if you were like sitting on public transportation and somebody you didn't know came in and sat really close to you and your body was touching their body. You'd probably say, it's not painful. It's not pleasant. Your mind's kind of uncomfortable in that situation, right? So that's what you would like to understand about this particular feeling. It's neither painful nor pleasant. It's kind of uncomfortable or dissatisfied, okay? So these are the three feelings that the Buddha is explaining that the unenlightened mind experiences. And these are conditioned feelings, meaning that based on some condition, the mind experiences this feeling. So if you wake up in the morning and it's sunny outside and you get so happy and excited, that's a conditioned feeling, that your happiness is based on the condition that it's sunny. And now when you go take a shower and you come out and it's raining, now you're sad based on the condition that this sun has changed and now you're experiencing the sadness or frustration or irritation. So these are what's called conditioned feelings. Now you can independently verify this. Again, that was the intellectual learning of this. Now independently verify it. Don't believe it because you know your mind is unenlightened. And if this is explaining the unenlightened mind, then it's explaining what you experience. Ask yourself, are there any feelings that you experience on a day-to-day basis that doesn't fit into one of these three categories? And if it doesn't fit into one of these three categories, it's not a universal truth. So this universally applies to all beings. So you should be able to independently verify this. Okay? Now, some people refer to this as suffering. You'll see this in some places that teach. I don't use that word because, in my opinion, it describes the painful feelings really well, but it doesn't describe the pleasant feelings or the neither painful nor pleasant feelings. Like if your mom called you up and said, hey, I'm going to come visit you on Friday. I heard you got a new apartment, and you got so excited because of that. You probably wouldn't say you were suffering. Or if your boss gave you a raise and you were so excited because you got that raise, you probably wouldn't say you were suffering when your boss gave you that raise. So the word suffering doesn't explain the full spectrum of emotions or feelings that one experiences. If that person you don't know comes and sits next to you on public transportation and your body's touching their body, you probably wouldn't say you were suffering in that situation. So if we use the word suffering, we're not fully understanding what it is that the Buddha is teaching here. We're only understanding 33% of what he taught. That means we're missing 66% of his teachings. And if you're missing 66% of a teacher's teachings, how could you ever get to the ultimate goal of enlightenment? So I encourage you to use the word discontent, discontented, or discontentedness, because it brings your mind to the full understanding of what the Buddha is teaching here on this important topic. He's describing how the mind's shaken up. It's unsteady, it's uncalm. Even when the mind's excited or elated, it's shaken up, it's unsteady, it's uncalm. I don't know about you guys, but if you've ever been so excited, you like tripped and fell, right, and hurt yourself, this is because the mind's unstable and unsteady, right? The mind's shaken up. That's what he's talking about here, that when you have conditioned feelings, the mind is shaken up. It's unsteady, it's uncalm, it's discontent, or it's experiencing discontentedness. Okay, so this is the second universal truth. The third universal truth is called non-self. This is actually a solution to one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. If you can think back to yesterday, I was introducing you to the 10 fetters, the 10 individual pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind. And I was explaining to you that you need to eradicate these 10 fetters, eliminate them from the mind in order to experience enlightenment. And what a fetter is that shackle and chain in the ball that's keeping the prisoner trapped during ancient times. They would keep prisoners confined to a certain area. So the Buddha describes these 10 pollutions as fetters because it's keeping the mind trapped in the unenlightened state. So what you're doing on this path is you're working to eliminate these 10 fetters. You're purifying the mind of these conditions. You're purifying it so you can get to this unconditioned mind. So the first fetter is called personal existence view. The universal truth of non-self is the solution for this. The personal existence view is where the mind is clinging to this body or to the mind, thinking that this is who you are, the self-image or the self-identity. The mind is confused. It's misunderstanding. It has this misperception. So the mind clings to this self-image. And now when you're in a social environment and you spill chocolate ice cream or pizza sauce or something on your clothing, you feel embarrassed because your mind wants to be perceived by others in a certain way. And now when you're being perceived that way, you feel good. But when you're not being perceived that way, you feel uncomfortable. You feel embarrassed. Or if you get a pimple or a mole or a wrinkle or a gray hair, or you get extra fat here or there, you might experience certain discontent feelings because of that, because the mind is holding on to this body, this self-image, thinking that this is who you are. And now you can't be comfortable in all situations. Then the mind is clinging to a self-identity, things like your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation, thinking that this is who you are. Like I am Chinese, or I am American, or I am French, or I am German, or I am a Brit, or whatever it is. The mind's holding on and clinging to this I am. And not just about your nationality or your ethnicity. It can cling to any number of things, thinking that this is who you are. Like I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, a certain label that you've identified with. And now when you're in a relationship, you feel great. But then when you guys break up and you're single, your mind doesn't identify with I am single. The mind identifies with I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend. And you might have been uncomfortable during that time when you were single and you felt like you wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship. And the mind thinks that that's the way to solve the problem. But the way to solve the problem is to get rid of these labels in the mind and not identify with this is who you are. If I identify with I am a police officer, when I'm doing that job, I'll feel great. But then after 10, 15, 20 years, if I retire or I get injured or I get fired from the job, I'll feel like less of a person. I'll feel diminished because I'm not doing that job anymore. So your mind can cling to all these things as your self-identity. You could be in a restaurant and 2 tables over, they could be talking about, all Americans are lovely and kind and warm and gentle and friendly, right? I've never heard this before, but this could be something that people say, right? Let's just say somebody says that. You could get all these pleasant feelings, right? And wow, they're talking about me. But now 2 tables over, they're talking in a way that's degrading or disparaging about the place where you come from. And now you think they're talking about you because you have that identity that you're clinging to in the mind. And now you feel angry or frustrated. You might even be ready to fight in this situation, right? So as long as your mind's clinging to any kind of identity, then you're going to struggle and have difficulties, be uncomfortable. I had a student one time that scheduled an appointment with me for personal guidance. And they said, David, I'm having a really hard time. I feel really uncomfortable. I said, what, really? What's going on? They said, ever since COVID, they've gone to this cashless system in America. And I go in to get my coffee and they turn the computer screen around and I need to pay with like a card or something. And it says, give me a tip. 25%, 28%, 30%. And he said, I am a great tipper. And he says, I don't give them a tip because I only spent 30 seconds talking to them and they gave me a coffee. I don't feel like I need to give them a tip. And I feel so conflicted by this. I don't understand what's going on. I feel so uncomfortable not tipping them. He's like, I am a great tipper. And I was like, that's your personal existence view. You're identifying with, I am a great tipper. And now in the situation where you're not tipping, your mind is having difficulties and struggles with that, right? He felt uncomfortable in this situation because he wasn't tipping. So this personal existence view can be, yes, your culture, ethnicity, sexual orientation, nationality, job, occupation, but it can be any number of different things. Sometimes people get to the point where they say, I don't even know who I am anymore. I don't know who I am. I need to find my true self, right? People will come to Thailand on this journey because they need to find themselves. They don't even know who they are anymore. They need to find their true self. Well, what the Buddha is saying is there is no self, right? Somebody might come to Thailand and they find a new job, new occupation, new friends, new hobbies, new activities, but none of that is you. As soon as you cling to any of those things, thinking that that is who you are, when those things change, you're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to be discontent. So the Buddha is teaching you that there is no self. You need to get to a point where you realize non-self, where you realize that this body is not you and this mind is not you. This self-image that people are seeing, that's not you. This self-identity that your mind is holding on to, that's not you. But as long as you cling to it, you're not going to be able to get to permanent peace and permanent joy, because it's only a matter of time before somebody says something either positive or negative, and now your mind is discontent. So this is the learning on the universal truth of non-self. And there's more here for you to understand. Sometimes people understand it when I first start describing it. Sometimes people need more help to be able to understand it. So the universal truth of non-self is explaining that this body isn't you. This mind isn't you. There is a body, there is a mind that has come together for this existence. But the Buddha is teaching you not to cling to it as being who you are as a person. Now you can independently verify it, right? Because that was the intellectual learning. Now you take it into reflection and try to determine if it's true or if it's false. Think about yourself when you were a child, teenager, early adulthood, and now. Think about your personality and your character and how you viewed yourself. Has it been exactly the same through all these 4 phases of your life, or has it been constantly changing? It's been changing, right? You view yourself differently. So you can see there is no self. These things are constantly changing. Here's another way. If your arm was amputated and you only have one hand and one arm, are you less of a person? Are you less of a person if you only have one hand and one arm? No? What about you guys? You're not less of a person? See, intellectually, you understand this body is not you. Right? Because otherwise you would have answered that question differently. But the mind's confusion, the lack of wisdom, that personal existence view that's in there, that pollution, if somebody says something negative or degrading about this body, you'll get frustrated. You'll get agitated or annoyed because of that personal existence view. Or if you spill something on your clothing, you'll get embarrassed, right? This is the confusion that the mind has because of that personal existence view. So if this body was you would have answered that question differently. But intellectually, you understand this body is not you, but you haven't moved that into practice to realize non-self. Here's a third way that you can independently verify this. Point to yourself. Where are you? Can you point? Okay, you're pointing here. That's a common place. People will point. Yep. Point here. Some people, yeah, you're pointing there. Yep. Some people point here or here. Okay. So you need to look at what you're pointing to. When I ask you, where are you? And you point, you're pointing to a shirt. That's what you're literally pointing to. So if I took off this shirt and I held it up, is that who I am? This shirt? Is that me? That shirt you're wearing, is that you? You're shaking your head no? Okay. So let's throw away the shirt. That's not you. That's not me. That shirt's not you. Okay, where are you? Someone might point again. What are you pointing to? Pointing to skin. Is that who you are? That skin that you've got? If I took off my skin and I held it up, is that me? Is that who I am? Are you that skin? No? Are you that skin? No? Is that who you are? That skin? No? You sure? Are you that skin? No? Okay, so let's throw away the skin. Where are you? Someone might point again, right? Well, you've got ribs, you got muscle tissue, you've got fluid and organs and things like that. None of those bits and pieces are you. But the confusion that the mind has is this is you. So now in a situation where someone says something positive about this body or negative or degrading, you'll experience discontentedness. Right? So you need to get to the point where you realize that there is no self. Okay, so this is something that students work on as they get going further on the path, but this is something that's part of the three universal truths, that there is no self. And this is something that the mind has to look at, and it has to practice, and it has to work on, because you've spent so much time in your life accumulating a concept of a self. The mind firmly believes that there is one. We were all given labels at birth. I know some of your labels. Mary, Gabby, Jake, right? I know some of your labels. My label's David, right? And now once we get this label, we start assigning this personality and character to it. We even have national anthems in our country and flags and sports teams that we identify with this as who we are. So we've spent so much time over our life accumulating what we think is a self, that our mind needs a lot of time to really digest this and to be able to see the truth, that there is no self here, that it's just a body, it's just a mind, and none of this determines who we are as a person. It's just physical structures, and it's just a mind. Okay, so this is the three universal truths. I'm going to pause and see if you guys have any questions before I move on. If you have questions, remember you can use the microphones here. And for those of you guys online, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Do you guys have any questions on these? Yeah, Mary has some questions. Yeah.
No, is it working? Oh, yeah, it's working. Just in respect of self, I don't know if I'm getting myself confused, but I think when we talk about identity, and is that like also like the feeling of belonging? Because I think we, in society itself, we all tend to go towards people who we identify with. Like, I'm here today, and I could probably sit and have a really good conversation with everybody in here because I feel connected to them because we've got the same interests. Mm-hmm. But is that me looking and identifying something in myself, if that makes sense?
It can be. If you identify with like, I am Buddhist, and therefore these other people are interested in Buddhism, so therefore we have an instant connection because that's part of my identity, then yes. Right? Because even the Buddha wasn't Buddhist, right? This I am Buddhist, that needs to actually eliminate from the mind. Like, I am not Buddhist. I choose to practice the teachings of the Buddha, but I don't identify with I am Buddhist. Or this body was born on a land that we refer to as America, but the mind doesn't have to adopt the identity of I am American. So that's where when you're getting to the point where you're realizing non-self, you can realize that these people have similar interests as you, but you don't have to identify with that as who you are. Because if you cling to that as who you are, let's just say you like sailboating, right? And you identify with, I am a sailboater. But now, 5 years down the road, you're not interested in sailboating anymore, and you move away from it, you'll feel conflicted, because that was like part of your identity that your mind was holding on to. So you can do these activities, you can enjoy these hobbies, but don't adopt it as who you are as a person, as an identity. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome. I see you guys have more questions.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is about this contentedness. So we need to eliminate all these feelings, but actually in this world when we live, emotions is what makes us alive. So then if we live the middle way and don't really have so much emotions, I don't know how to put it in words. So does it mean that you don't really experience joy and happiness and all this stuff? Because if you have happiness, then there's opposite that will have sadness.
Okay.
So this is the first question. The second question is...
Let me answer the first one first. So these feelings are not what makes you alive. What makes you alive is oxygen and food and your heart beating and your lungs. This is what makes you alive. These are conditioned feelings, meaning that based on some condition, you're going to experience some kind of feeling. By the time you get to enlightenment, you're experiencing unconditioned mental states where your mind is just always happy. It's always joyful. In the unenlightened state, with these conditioned feelings, there are certain conditions that have to be met. If the weather is this, if my mom and dad does this, if my boss does this, if my bank account is this, then I will be happy, which means your happiness becomes less and less and less and less. This is why some people become very old and very grumpy, because they have all these expectations in their mind. They're having all these conditions of things that they want to occur in order for them to then be happy. So the amount of happiness that you can have becomes less and less and less. But when you clear this out of the mind, where you're not experiencing conditional feelings anymore, but you're experiencing unconditioned mental qualities, you can just be happy all the time. You can be joyful all the time. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you're beyond these conditioned feelings. You're now experiencing unconditioned mental qualities where your mind's always cheerful, always glad, always uplifted. But it's a different type of happiness than what you're currently used to. Right now, you're happy based on something. If this thing happens, then I will be happy. And if it doesn't happen, I will then be sad. But the happiness that we're talking about here is where the mind is uplifted and it's joyful and it's bright and it's glad and it's cheerful. There's brightness and radiance in the mind at all times. And that's something that you can maintain permanently because there's no condition that is causing it. So the mind is just always in that mental state. You don't need these feelings to be alive.
All right. The second question is, so you mentioned that there's no self. Then who are we actually then?
This is the mind continuing to grasp, right? The mind's like, well, if this body's not me and the mind's not me, then who am I? What am I? The mind's trying to grab onto something. It's trying to hold on to something to find something that this is me. This is who I am. There is a human being here. It has a body, it has a mind. They've come together for this existence. But what the Buddha is teaching you is don't grab onto any of this and identify it with who you are as a person. And this will help you to become more peaceful and more joyful.
So do you mean the self is very fluid and it will change over time? So that's why we don't cling on one image.
What I'm saying is that there is no self, but the mind is going to try to grab onto something that there is one. So yes, throughout those different phases of your life, like childhood, teenage years, adulthood, early adulthood, and now, the mind has had this concept of a self, and that has been constantly changing through these periods of time. But each time as it's changed, there's been certain difficulties and struggles that you've encountered because of it, because of that changing. So you would like to get to the point where you realize non-self, and now you realize this body nor this mind is you, and you can experience peace and joy because you're not clinging to it, wanting it to be permanent. Mm-hmm. Did I see another question over here somewhere? Or is that it? No? Okay. All right. So now let's move to this next build. Oh, let me check online, see if we have any questions here. Okay, I don't see any online. Okay, so let's move to this next one here. This is another building block, and then I'm going to teach you the Four Noble Truths. You need to understand what is a craving, desire, attachment, wants, expectations, grasping, holding, clinging. What this is it's an aspect of the mind where the mind is longing and yearning. The mind is pulling in the direction of the objects of its affection. The mind is thinking that the next new shiny object around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases it and chases it and chases it and chases it. It thinks that this external thing is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases after it and chases after it and chases after it. So if you've ever been in the mall and you saw a brand new pair of shoes, and you're like, oh, brand new pair of shoes. Oh, yes, I can't wait to get those on my feet. They're going to look so good. Oh, man. Or, oh, brand new piece of jewelry. Oh, I just can't wait to get that on my finger. Oh, that's going to look so amazing. Or any number of things like this. The mind is just longing, yearning for something external, thinking that this is going to make everything better in life. Oh, boyfriend or girlfriend, that's what I need. I need a boyfriend or girlfriend. Oh, let me get one of those. That's going to make everything better in my life. Or, oh, I know what it is, more money. I need more money. Let me chase after that for a while. So it's not the object itself. It's not the money that is the attachment. It's the mind longing, yearning for it. It's not the boyfriend or girlfriend that is the attachment. It's the mind longing, yearning for it. You guys know what I'm talking about? Have you experienced this before? The mind pulling towards something and forming your inner feelings based on that thing. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? This is vitally important for you to understand what a craving, desire, attachment is. If you don't understand this, you're not going to understand the Four Noble Truths. It's the mind longing, yearning. The mind has almost this unquenchable thirst, thinking that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide lasting satisfaction. It's not the object itself. It's not the video game or the pair of shoes or the purse. It's the mind longing, yearning for it, thinking that this is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. Okay? If you guys don't know what this is, let me know. Okay? All right. So now I'm going to move on to the Four Noble Truths. This is where you can really have a breakthrough to understanding the problem in your mind, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. In 4 simple statements that you can independently verify, you can have a real breakthrough to finally understanding what's causing your anger, your sadness, your frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings are being caused by the same thing, and it's not anything external. So let me help you to understand this, because then once you understand what's causing it, you can actually work to eliminate it and get to the peace and the joy that is always present in the mind. So this first noble truth is explaining the problem. Everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness. This is the problem that you're experiencing, that the mind is discontent. It's happy and excited, yay, but then it's sad and it's frustrated or irritated. But then you're lonely and bored, but then you're stressed and having anxiety. You probably have periods of peace here and there, but it's only a matter of time before your mind goes up into that excited state and down into the sad state. These are the conditioned feelings. Pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant. This is the problem. This isn't what's keeping you alive or making you feel human. This is a problem that the mind is experiencing because it's going up and down and up and down. It's shaken up. And now when your mind is shaken up, you make unwise decisions about certain things in your day-to-day life. So that is the problem. The cause of the problem is the second noble truth. Discontentedness is caused by our own cravings, desires, attachments, because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world is impermanent. So I'm going to say that a few times, and I'm going to give you some examples to help you understand it. The discontentedness, the pleasant feelings, the painful feelings, and the neither painful nor pleasant is caused by the craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection, wanting things to be permanent, when in reality you live in an impermanent world. Okay, so let me give you some examples on this. Think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend that you got, the brand new boyfriend or girlfriend. When you guys first got together, you got all these pleasant feelings. Wow, someone's showing attention to me. Someone has affection for me. Someone's calling me, sending me text messages, checking in on me. We're going out to the movies. We're going out to dinner. We're going to the park and having great conversations. Maybe there's intimate contact where you're having sexual activity. Wow, so much pleasure during this period of time. But then over the course of this relationship, you had certain expectations of them. You wanted certain things from them. And they couldn't fulfill those permanently. And they had certain expectations of you, and you couldn't fulfill those permanently. And now you guys got angry or frustrated or irritated, and you broke up, and you ended the relationship. And now you might have been angry or frustrated. You might have felt lonely or bored. You might have been missing this person for a period of time. It wasn't your love that was causing that. It wasn't your care. What it was the mind was craving permanence and wanted this relationship to be permanent. Even if you guys were together for the rest of your life, this relationship was still impermanent because more likely than not, one of you would have died first, right? As long as your mind's craving permanence, wanting something to be permanent when in reality it is impermanent, you will struggle and have difficulties when you experience that impermanence because the mind lacks wisdom of that. The same thing is occurring like if someone dies, grandma, grandpa, mom or dad, brothers or sisters. If they die and you feel grief and sorrow and sadness, you're not a bad person. You haven't done anything wrong, but it's not your love. It's not your care. Love is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. This is not causing your sadness. What's causing your sadness is your craving for grandma or grandpa to be permanent, when in reality they are impermanent. They were born, so they had to die, right? Think about a wedding. If you've ever been to a wedding and you were crying, or other people around you were crying and grieving, this is because of the mind craving permanence. You see brother and sister going off into the world with someone else, or maybe a cousin or a friend. That's my brother. How could they be taking my brother away from me, right? This is the mind craving permanence, right? The mind's holding on to this person. Mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, they're crying, they're upset, they're grieving at this wedding. Why? Because the mind is craving permanence. Think back to when you got dropped off at university or college, or maybe when you got dropped off at school when you were a little baby, a little child. There's oftentimes a lot of grief during this period of time, a lot of sorrow, right? If you're like 4 years old, 3 years old, or even when you're 18 and you're going away to college and university, mom and dad or the child that's getting dropped off can be crying and upset because the mind's craving permanence and holding on. It thought that this relationship was permanent when in reality there's impermanence, that you're going to go away from mom and dad, but then you're going to come back and then you're going to go away. Here's another example that doesn't involve relationships. Maybe you can see it even more clearly with this. Think about if you had a certain car that you were really interested in purchasing this car, and you were saving all this money for this car, maybe 5-10 years, and you finally get enough money to go purchase this car, and you drive this car off the parking lot, and all these people are looking at you like, wow, look at her, she's so successful. Look at him, he's so successful. Wow, such a nice car, and you're so proud driving down the road. You park it at a store, you go inside, and you come out, and there's a scratch on your car. Oh my goodness, you're probably so upset. You're so frustrated. You've been saving for so long for this car. It's not the scratch that's causing the anger. It's not the person who scratched your car. What's causing this frustration and anger is the mind is craving permanence. It's wanting this car to be permanently beautiful, when in reality, it's not possible. Now, we're not talking about what's wise or unwise, because when we walk through a parking lot, we aspire not to scratch anyone's car. But the fact is that this car is impermanent, that it's going to get scratched. By the time this car ages, not only is it going to get scratched, but the paint's going to fade, the tires are going to need to be changed, the upholstery is going to get ripped and torn perhaps. This is all impermanence. But as long as our mind is craving permanence, this car, as it starts changing, we're going to be frustrated or agitated or annoyed by that. We're going to get angry. And it's not the scratch, and it's not the person who scratched the car. It's the mind craving permanence. Okay, so these are a few examples for you. But now, relate it to your own life, okay? Because I've given you the intellectual learning here. But now, relate it to your own life so you can see the truth for yourself. Think about a recent time where you've been angry, frustrated, irritated, or annoyed, or some other discontent feeling. At that time, you might have been trying to blame other people, because that's what the mind does, is it looks for other people to blame, because it couldn't be you, right? That's the way the mind thinks because of its ego and its lack of wisdom. It can't be you that's causing this anger or frustration. It's got to be somebody else, right? So the mind usually looks for someone else to blame. But now look at that same situation. It might have been this morning, yesterday, or last week, right? There was something your mind wanted in that situation. There was something you were expecting, you were craving, you were longing for it. And if you would have got it, you would have been happy. But because you didn't get what you wanted, the mind was angry or frustrated or agitated or annoyed. Do you see it? Do you see it? Yeah? Okay, right? This is your own mind causing these feelings. It's nothing external. But the mind walks around with a lack of wisdom of these Four Noble Truths, firmly believing that somebody else is causing you to be angry or causing you to be frustrated. But when you can come to understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, you can have a real breakthrough. And now you can see that it's your own mind causing it, and you can actually eliminate it. I'll give you an example I think we can all relate to. Think about when we were children and we liked chocolate and ice cream. And we were like, mommy, daddy, I want chocolate and ice cream. I want chocolate and ice cream. They're like, sure, here you go. Here's some chocolate and ice cream. Ah, you're the best mommy and daddy ever, right? And then we say, mommy, daddy, I want some more chocolate and ice cream. Okay, here you go. Here's some chocolate and ice cream. But at some point, mommy and daddy said, no, you can't have chocolate and ice cream. You're the worst mommy and daddy ever, right? Well, what was that? That wasn't mommy and daddy. All that was impermanence, that this chocolate and ice cream is not permanent, but our mind craved it. We were longing, yearning for it. We wanted it to be permanent. And when we got it, we were happy. And when we didn't get it, we were angry and sad. It's not mommy and daddy that's causing this. And you can see this with things like your bank account. If your bank account balance is here, you're happy. If it's here, you're sad. There's nobody even involved. There's no other person even involved. If you look at the sun and it's sunny, you get so happy and excited. And then when it rains, you get frustrated and annoyed. There's not even another person involved in this situation. You can see it's your mind craving permanence. It's not other people who are causing you to be angry or sad or frustrated. Now, they could be doing something that is unwise, but that's not what's causing your mind to be angry or sad or frustrated. It's your mind craving permanence. Okay, so this is the second noble truth. And you're going to need to see this more and more clearly, because what happens when the mind becomes angry and frustrated and sad, when it's experiencing those painful feelings, is it's going to tend to push people away or push a situation away. This is called aversion, where the mind thinks the way to solve this is to push this thing away. Right? That's called aversion. And that doesn't solve your problems. You've probably pushed away friends or family members before, right? We probably all have, right? We push people away. We push the situation away. This is called aversion. That doesn't solve the problem. Or the other thing you'll do when you feel the painful feelings coming up is you'll be angry. You'll be bitter and harsh and hostile. You'll become unskillful through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. And now that person might actually choose to leave out of your life. It's kind of like an animal growling and roaring at another animal. It's like, right? And now this animal's trying to fear this other animal to do things your way, right? We're not animals. We're human beings. We don't need to fear people into doing things our way. So as long as you're growling and roaring at other people, you can't live harmoniously with all beings. Or the third thing that you might do when you're experiencing those painful feelings, falsely attributing it to something external, is you might put your expectations on people and try to control them and force them to do things your way. Because the mind's trying to get its cravings fulfilled. The mind, with its lack of wisdom, thinks if I can push this person away, I can get what I want. Or if I be bitter, harsh, and hostile, they'll do what I want. Or if I put my expectations on them and control them, then they'll do what I want. I'm pressuring them into doing things my way. And in this situation, you can't live with all beings harmoniously. People will choose to leave out of your life. You'll have broken relationships, right? So there's a solution for this, and that's the third noble truth. The Buddha is explaining to you that the elimination of discontentedness is possible by eliminating craving, desire, attachment. If you can eliminate the cause of your discontentedness, then you can eliminate the actual discontentedness, right? So if the cause of discontentedness is craving, desire, attachment, if you eliminate that cause, you will eliminate the effect. Right? You just need to eliminate the cause. So if you eliminate the cravings, desires, attachments, where the mind's longing, yearning, and chasing after things, forming your inner feelings on whether you get that or not, you can then experience peace and joy all the time. The solution for this and how to actually accomplish this is in the fourth noble truth. The path to eliminating discontentedness, excuse me, the path to eliminating discontentedness is the Eightfold Path. This is the complete perfect plan that's going to guide you in training your mind to not chase after things, to not form your inner feelings based on whether you get it or not. It's going to help you eliminate that longing, yearning, the craving, the desire, the wanting things and expecting things to be a certain way permanently. So you're going to need to learn all of these individual steps. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. But it starts with right view because that's the foundation. If you had wrong view, Wrong view would be to blame other people for the feelings that you're experiencing, for the things that you're experiencing on a day-to-day life, blaming others. This is what the mind does, because in the mind of the unenlightened being, where there's ego, which is arrogance and pride, it's like you're perfect. Everybody else is the problem. Anything that's happening to you that is unwholesome, it's got to be somebody else's problem. It can't be you, right? So there's no need to feel guilty or shameful here. This is what the mind does in the unenlightened state. I'm sure you've been in arguments before where you've been adamantly trying to convince people that what they are doing is making you angry and they have to stop doing what they're doing, or else you're going to continue to get angry. I'm sure you've been doing that, right? But that's wrong view, blaming other people. So if you learn, if you reflect on the Four Noble Truths and you can start to see that they're true, the way that you practice the Four Noble Truths and establish right view is now and forever. Look internally. Whenever you're experiencing discontentedness, look inward. Don't look outward. Don't blame mom. Don't blame dad. Don't blame brothers and sisters or boss or people like this. Look inward and try to figure out, what is my mind longing, yearning for here? There's something I'm craving. I showed up to the airport. My flight is delayed or canceled. And I'm sitting here in the waiting room for 3 hours waiting for the next flight. And you're frustrated. You're craving to go to Thailand, or wherever it is that your flight's going, right? You're longing, yearning. You're wanting this plane to be permanently on time, and it's just not possible. There's going to be weather delays. There's going to be maintenance issues. There's going to be crew issues. This plane cannot take off permanently on time. You're going to show up to the airport, and you're going to have delays in your flight. It's normal. It's impermanence. Right? But if your mind is craving permanence, when you show up to the airport and your flight's delayed, you'll be frustrated. But it's not the airline. It's not the plane. It's not any of these things. It's your own mind craving this permanence. So this is where you can really have a transformation in your life if you have this breakthrough to establishing right view. Do you guys have any questions on right view? Yes. If you could get a microphone.
Yeah, so can you go back to the last page? Because I can't really seem to relate one of the things that bother me the most right now with the second noble truth. So I just quickly share my experience about like eating. So that's something that caused me a lot of pain, and I'm pretty sure it comes from the craving and desire of food. But the process is that so there are usually like two scenarios.
The microphone's impermanent. See? Why aren't you angry? Why don't you get frustrated or annoyed? You're not craving for that microphone to be permanent, right?
Yeah.
You can independently verify it.
So there are two scenarios. So one is when I'm bored, I don't know what to do. And the other is when I'm reluctant to do what I have to do. So when those scenarios happen, I tend to eat food to kind of like extend the time of myself eating so that I don't need to think about what to do, or I don't need to do what I have to do. And then after eating a lot, then I feel guilt and shame because I know that I'm not treating my body in the right way. And there's a lot of also things related to like body shame, other problems. But I can't really seem to relate like how it's because of my desire or wanting it to be permanent. I don't see any permanence here.
Yeah. What the mind's craving there is these pleasant feelings. So when the mind's experiencing painful feelings, one of the things that the mind does is, because of its lack of wisdom, it's trying to get back to something that's somewhat comfortable. And with a lack of wisdom, the mind doesn't understand how to do that. The way you get back to comfort is you eliminate your craving. That's how you get back to peace and joy. But what the mind's going to do in the unenlightened state with its lack of wisdom, when it's experiencing painful feelings, is it's going to crave something else. It's going to try to get those pleasant feelings. This is why someone might come home from a hard day at work and turn to alcohol. or they come home from a hard day at work and they have sex, or they come home from a hard day at work and they go shopping or gambling, because what they're doing is they're trying to crave, their mind is craving to try to get back to those pleasant feelings. And the only way that the unwise mind knows how to do that is through more craving. And it just keeps the problem going over and over and over again. So you need to be able to see that what the problem is the mind craving for permanence, and it's having this longing, yearning, wanting things to be a certain way. And when you're experiencing those painful feelings, rather than turn to food to get those pleasant feelings, is to cut that off and say, no, I'm not going to allow the mind to do that. That's what you're going to learn in the Eightfold Path of how to do that. Right now, your mind doesn't know how to do that, and it can't do it because it hasn't been trained. But once you start with this wisdom, now we can build all the rest, and I can show you how to actually transform the mind.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I have two questions. One you might explain later, so I'll ask you both and then you can tell me. First is, I understand that in order to remove suffering, then you need to remove craving, but then how do you practically do that? Through meditation? And second question is more...
Let me answer the first one first. Let's just do one at a time.
Okay.
Yeah. So the way that you eliminate craving, desire, attachment is through the Eightfold Path. That's what the Buddha is teaching you here, is that the solution to eliminating your craving, desire, attachment is learning each one of these factors and implementing them into your life. As I walk you through this, I'm going to show you how each one of these factors is helping you to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. So it's not just one thing that you're doing. There's multiple things that you need to do in order to train the mind so that you can restrain it and you don't allow it to long and yearn in these situations.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is more related to practical interactions with the others at work. For me personally, in my job was to manage the commercial strategy of luxury hotels, which means that it's a whole industry that gravitates around money and power. Right. So even if you do have a team and you do embrace the concept that there's impermanence, so they can't do always everything the right way and they might need guidance, and sometimes you will not reach the goals, then you do have your peers and your responsibles above that will not accept this reasoning, just because majority of human beings, especially in certain industries that are very money oriented, they just don't think, oh, it's impermanent, so it's fine if you didn't reach the X millions euros or whatever that you were supposed to reach. So how do you manage in that case the expectations of other people at work? Because for me, what I see today, which I've been thinking for months or years now, the only solution is to change industry, because I don't see that possible in an environment where everyone is so hungry about, more titles, more money, more power.
Yeah, so it's individual people that are experiencing this, while there can be some particular industries where it tends to, people with a lot of craving tend to gravitate towards. You can choose which person you're working for, which company you're working for, or whether you even work for yourself in certain situations. So whatever choices you make, whether you're working for someone who has a lot of craving and a lot of expectations or not, is a choice that you're making. So you can't manage someone else's expectations. They have to be able to see themselves that their expectations is leading to their own discontentedness. You can give them a heads up. Like if your boss is like, hey, I expect you to meet this particular sales goal, you can have conversations with them and you say, hey, boss, I understand you would like me to meet that particular sales goal, and I'm surely going to work towards it as best as I can, but I'm not quite sure that I can get to that, but I'm going to be working towards it. But just to let you know, it looks like it's a little bit unrealistic. If you could be understanding that I may or may not be able to meet this goal, then that's going to help you to be able to be more peaceful and more joyful. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm going to be working to be able to accomplish this, but just understand I may or may not be able to. And whether they choose to let that expectation go or not is a choice for them. And that's where you need to decide whether or not this is a place or a person that you would actually like to work for. Because when I was in corporate world, I had different bosses, and I was always very fortunate that my bosses, they didn't put expectations on me and try to control me. They allowed me to flourish and do the things that I knew that was best. And I never asked them, but I suspect that I was exceeding their expectations, if they had any expectations at all. But they never really gave me any expectations. They just allowed me to flourish and do all the things that I felt was best in my particular role. So you're going to need to make wise decisions about who you choose to work for. And that's why when you go through the interview process, you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. You're trying to figure these kinds of things out, and you can be asking them questions like, what are your expectations? What happens if someone doesn't meet your expectations? What is the result of that? So you can ask these kinds of questions and make sure that you're entering into a situation with your eyes wide open and fully understanding. And then ultimately, you might even decide to work for yourself rather than work for somebody else. And that's an option that each individual has.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because in the end, I did quit that job because there was a lot of stakeholders and they just were unreasonable and very angry about the way they were managing things. So it's kind of you absorb it and then you put it back into the world, that kind of anger.
Just understand that if you switch jobs and you move around to different jobs, that's not going to solve your discontentedness. That you're not going to be able to get to peace and joy by just changing a job. While a job may need to be changed, and that might be a wise decision for you, you're not going to get to peacefulness that way. So if you're in a job and you're experiencing painful feelings or frustration or agitation, you need to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments, and you might still choose to move to a different job, but that's not going to give you the peace and joy that you're looking for. Sometimes people, if they're frustrated with one company, they think they could move to another one and they're going to get peaceful there, but they're going to have problems in that new company too. That's why they'll have craving and they'll get so excited the first 3 to 6 months of a job, maybe even the first year, but then over time that excitement wanes and now they feel disgruntled in that particular job because their cravings aren't getting fulfilled. And now they're having all these expectations, and this job is they're experiencing a lot of frustration in this job, but it's not the job that's causing it. It's the expectations and the craving in one's own mind.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I saw some more mics go out. I'm not sure who's first. Yeah.
David, I seem to have concepts and the foundation of the Noble Truths, but there's two emotive states that I'm struggling with. That's empathy and sympathy. Are these being considered as attachments to the permanent state?
Okay, so let's talk about sympathy or empathy. It depends on how you have been taught about this, right? So some people describe empathy as understanding someone's feelings and sharing in those feelings, okay? Some people describe empathy as understanding someone's feelings. So it depends on how you think about it. If you understand someone's feelings with getting on the path to enlightenment, you'll understand people's feelings really, really well because you're understanding the cause of their feelings. You'll understand why people experience the feelings that they experience really well. That's understanding someone's feelings. That's the type of empathy that you would like to practice, where you understand people's feelings. But if you've been taught that empathy or sympathy is to understand someone's feelings and to share in their feelings, that's the craving, desire, attachment, that sharing of their feelings. So just because mom's sad, I don't have to be sad just because she's sad, right? That would be sharing in someone's feelings. That's like mom stuck into quicksand, so I'm going to get down into the quicksand with her. No, stay on stable ground, reach out your hand. Mom, grab my hand. I'm going to pull. You need to kick. Come on, let's go. Let's get you out of here, right? So if you would like to practice empathy, which is wise, you would be able to practice that through understanding the Four Noble Truths, because you will surely understand people's feelings, but you're not interested in sharing in their feelings because that's going to take you down into the same misery as them, and now you're useless. Yeah.
Working?
There it is.
Okay. I'm gonna relate to her question, like, and your answer about the job.
Mm-hmm. You guys will need to change out those batteries.
Yeah, and I would like you to hear more about, for example, you say when you do a job interview, you're also asking some questions, and you're asking, for example, what are your expectations, and how would you react if your expectations are not met?
Mm-hmm.
But especially the second questions, like how would you react? It's something that I don't see myself asking. Like in my mind, it's very clear, and it's what I would like to do once I will go back to Europe, and I will do some interviews to find a job after my trip. But I don't think it's something that it will be well taken from the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that maybe you will not choose this person to work with or for. But at the same time, maybe we need a job, and maybe you will like the job. And maybe also in our culture, it's something that it's not asked, or I don't know.
Yeah, this is where you can't cling to the job and you can't crave the job. If you're going into a job interview and you ask a question and they're not willing to answer it, and they don't hire you because you've asked a question, why would you be interested to work for that person? If their mind is that sensitive that you just ask a question, like what would be the result if I don't meet your expectations? If they get angry and frustrated at that and they don't hire you because of it, hey, they just saved you a bunch of time, because otherwise you're going to be walking on eggshells around this boss who you just ask him a question and they want to fire you and get rid of you. That's not the kind of company that I would suggest you'd be interested to work for. And you not being willing to ask the question, this is because of your craving and your expectations and your personal existence view that you're hesitant to ask it, because you have this craving of what you want, and you feel like if I ask this question, I'm not going to get what I want. So if you get rid of these cravings, desires, attachments, realize that what you're ultimately working towards is wise decision making. You need to make wise decisions in order to experience wholesome results in your life. And you can't make wise decisions if you're uninformed. So by asking questions, it allows you to get information, and now you're fully informed to make wise decisions about what job you're going to work at, for example, because that's a very important decision to be able to make. So if you go into an interview and just asking questions, they're uncomfortable with that, that gives you an indication of what type of company this is. And I would say you should be disinterested in working for that company.
But what do you mean with your question? For example, is it like, because it's normal that in a job there are expectations and you need to fulfill these expectations because it's the task, like you're applying for this, doing this task every day. And I don't understand if it is asking what is their method to communicate, or really like if I don't do what you're asking me and what you're paying me for doing these things, what you will do.
Yeah, what you're trying to understand is anybody who you work for, you're working for that person, and that person has a certain mindset and they make decisions in a certain way. And if you're choosing to work for somebody, now the way that that person makes decisions is going to affect you. So when you go into a job interview, you would like to understand this person's mind and how they make decisions, because your life is now going to be affected by how that person makes decisions. And if this person doesn't make wise decisions, you're going to have all kinds of complications. And this is a major significant decision about how you make money, how you get your basic necessities met. So asking a person questions in a job interview, like your potential boss, this is going to be very insightful for you to help you understand their mind and how they make decisions.
Okay. So, for example, recently I've been applying for some volunteerings here in Asia, and I've been asking many questions, but I feel always like it's a bit annoying for the other person. And it's new for me to ask so many questions and to be sure where I'm going. But I feel sometimes some people are a bit annoyed or a bit like, oh, but this is very precise, or I don't know, like.
Okay, I'll share it with you on both sides, because I've been an employee plenty of times, and I've also been an employer at different times. As an employer, you're looking for an employee who is the right fit for your company, because the hiring process and the training process to get somebody into your company is very expensive, and you're looking to make a wise decision as an employer. And in two candidates, one person who comes in and doesn't ask any questions at all, and the other potential employee who comes in and asks lots of questions, that one is more interesting to me as an employer because it shows me they're thinking about the job, they're really serious about it, and they're trying to figure out whether it's a good fit for them. This person over here who has no questions whatsoever, they're just walking into it blindly, and that shows me that whenever they approach a new assignment or a new project, they're walking into it blindly. This person over here is putting thought and consideration into this decision that they're about to make. That person is more interesting to me because they're showing me that when they approach something new, they really think it through and they have all these different questions. So if you go into a place where they don't want you to ask questions as part of your job interview, I would say that's not the right place for you to work, because you're going to need to ask questions. Your boss comes to you with a new project. Maybe you don't even have the skills that you need in order to be able to work on that project. You're going to have to ask them a bunch of questions. And if they don't like that you're asking questions, I would say that's the wrong place to work in, because as an employee, you're going to need to ask questions. So you would like to establish early on in the job interview process that, hey, I'm a person that asks questions. I'm going to need information here, and I would like to see if these people are comfortable answering my questions. So if you avoid doing that, asking questions, now you walk into the job blindly and you find out all these things about the job once you get into it. And now 2 months, 3 months into the job, wow, it's not the right job for you. And now you've got to go do your job search all over again. And next thing you know, your resume, you're just bouncing around from job to job to job to job to job. But if you put some thought into each job that you take, you can hold that job for an extended period of time. And now the employer can see you have consistency, you're well thought out, you're very deliberate, you're making wise decisions. This is the way to approach employment.
And I feel bad with the idea of asking these questions because of the personal view.
Yeah, you're wanting them to perceive you a certain way. And now, if you're not being perceived that way, and this is all within your own mind, it's not them. Because as I just shared with you, some employers, when employees come in and they're asking a bunch of questions, this is wonderful. I got someone who's really interested in my company. They're going to make a wise decision here because they're really evaluating whether this is a good company or not. As an employer, I would enjoy that thoroughly, right? But in your mind, you think asking a lot of questions is not good. And that's where you've got to let go of that perception and realize that that's your own perception that you're clinging to. And you've got to get rid of wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way and just know what is wise. Walking into a new job, you need to fully evaluate it and thoroughly understand it. And that's going to require questions. So get rid of your perception, get rid of your personal existence view, and do what's wise, which is ask questions and make sure you fully understand the position before you take it.
Thank you.
That's what's going to produce the best results. Okay, so now you guys are starting to understand right view. We talked a whole lot more about other things besides right view, but that's okay. You guys needed this help, so I help you. Right view is maintaining the view that it's your craving, desire, attachment that's causing these feelings. It's nothing external. That's what right view is. Having the right view of what is truly causing these feelings, right? It's craving, desire, attachment. It's within your own mind. Now we're going to move on to right intention. And this one's not going to take me the same amount of time to teach you. That first one takes a lot of time because you really need to establish right view. Because if you didn't understand right view, you would understand anything else that the Buddha has to teach you. You need to be able to understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings and see that very clearly. So here's right intention. In what, monks, is right intention? The intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, the intention of harmlessness. This is called right intention. So these are three aspects of right intention. Some people call this right thinking or right thought because these are aspects of the mind that you're looking to cultivate. The intention of renunciation, which is your willingness to let go and give up your unwholesomeness and give up your false beliefs and opinions. If you experience anger, frustration, sadness, and all these other discontent feelings, there's certain false beliefs that you have in your mind that you're clinging to and you're holding on to, and you're going to need to be willing to get rid of those. You're going to need to have an open mind to be willing to let go of those false beliefs, because as long as you hold on to your false beliefs, you're not going to be able to get to enlightenment. So the intention of renunciation is the willingness to let go and give up your unwholesomeness and your false beliefs. The very first false belief that you have to get rid of is the false belief that someone else is causing you to be angry. You're going to need to let that go. But you're not getting rid of your false beliefs and bringing in new beliefs. That's not what you're doing on the path to enlightenment. You're learning, you're reflecting to independently verify, and you're practicing to cultivate wisdom so that you can see the truth and you can see true reality. And when this wisdom that you're bringing in conflicts with this belief that you've held all these years, you got to get rid of that belief. And now you've got wisdom. You know the truth. You know the truth that it's your own mind that's causing these discontent feelings, that it's craving, desire, attachment. So you're going to need to practice the intention of letting go of this false belief. Because if you didn't, you would just have a closed mind. You wouldn't have an open mind. If you're not willing to cultivate wisdom and get rid of your false beliefs, you'll never get to enlightenment. So that's why this is part of the path to enlightenment, is a willingness to let go of the unwholesome things that you're doing now and letting go of those false beliefs, because they're not serving you well at all. They're conflicts in your own mind. So you're going to be bringing in this wisdom, and you got to get rid of these false beliefs. Then there's this intention of non-ill will. What non-ill will is this is a double negative. So in English, when you have a double negative, it's a positive, right? So non-ill will is good will. So you're practicing the intention of goodwill, where you have a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. The opposite of this would be ill will or animosity or bitterness or anger, hatred, frustration, agitation, annoyance. You would like to practice the intention of goodwill, where you have a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. Then you need the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others, where you have no interest or no inclination of causing harm to others. Because anytime you put harm out, harm is going to come back to you. So you need to have the intention or the thinking or the thought that you're not interested in causing harm to other beings. Causing harm to others would be like causing harm to their material possessions, to their physical body, to their reputation. You can't cause someone else to be discontent. Just like no one else can cause you to be discontent, you can't cause someone else to be discontent, but you can cause them harm. And when you're causing harm, harm is going to come back to you. So you need to get to the point where you have the intention or the thinking or the thought where you're disinterested in causing harm to other beings. You're not interested in causing harm to their material possessions, to their physical body, to their reputation, and things like this. Okay, so this is the intention, right intention, the intention of renunciation, non-ill will or goodwill, and the intention of harmlessness. So now, just to summarize what we've been talking about under this wisdom section, right view is the Four Noble Truths. And essentially what this is teaching you is that craving, desire, attachment is the cause of your discontentedness. It's your own mind that's causing these feelings, nothing external. So essentially what you need to do is accept responsibility for your own feelings, your own intentions, your own speech, and your own actions. Because as long as you're blaming other people for what you're experiencing, you'll never transform your mind. You'll never transform your life. Right? So you need to accept responsibility for what you're experiencing on a day-to-day basis within your own mind and within your own life. Then there's right intention, practice of the intention of renunciation, that willingness to let go of your unwholesomeness and your false beliefs and opinions, and the intention of non-ill will or practicing loving kindness, goodwill towards all beings, and then practicing harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. So you guys have any questions on this? Yes, sir.
Yes. My question is about just a situation where someone has caused, or not caused, you have felt harm from somebody, and you would like to I guess you would like to indicate to them that you would like to I don't know how to say it. It's a hard thing to put into words. You would like to inform them that you have this I guess this feeling, but without like causing them harm. Is it something that you would even do, or is it something you would just try to not feel the harm because it's coming from you?
What's the feeling of harm? If you can be more specific, it'll help.
Like an example would be somebody that has harmed your reputation.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that this is a sort of the feeling of self, that you want to be seen a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
But you want to let them know that this had happened. Maybe they don't.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
It really depends on the relationship. If it's somebody that you're not committed to, it's not really a long-standing relationship, and someone damaged your reputation, it's best to just distance yourself from that relationship and move on, because this person has ill will towards you and they're trying to damage you. And if it's not your reputation, it's going to be something else. So going to that person and saying, hey, you damaged my reputation, I want you to stop that, da 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 da. This is just trying to teach that person something that they haven't chosen to learn on their own, because in their mind, they're going to see what they're doing is wise, or otherwise they wouldn't have done it to begin with. So it's better to just distance yourself from that person. But let's just say it's like your life partner or like a child or someone that you're really close to, and they're damaging your relationship. You might choose to go to them and talk with them and have a conversation with them without putting your expectations on them, helping them to be able to see that what they're choosing to do is unwise and that that's not something that you would choose to do. You're not interested in damaging their reputation, but helping them to be able to see that there's a better way for them to conduct themselves. But you need to be able to do that without expectations or trying to control them or force them. But you talk to them and ask them questions and guide them and help them to be able to see what they're currently doing is unwise. And then they still may choose to do it after that. And that's why you're not interested in having an expectation, because if they choose to do it afterwards, after that talk, you're going to get angry and frustrated when they choose to do it again.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to take a break. It's basically 5 minutes to 11. We're going to take a break up to 11:15. And when we come back, I'm going to continue on in our journey here, helping you to understand the moral conduct section in the mental discipline section. So enjoy your 20-minute break, and I'll see you at 11:15. Okay. So welcome back to you guys. Welcome back to everyone online as well. I'm going to continue with this Eightfold Path, now moving into the moral conduct section, where you're going to be able to learn right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Whenever you're learning moral conduct from the teachings of the Buddha, it's important to understand what he's teaching you is the natural law of karma, of cause and effect, or action and result. He's not teaching you rules or commandments. He's not teaching you anything like that. He's not trying to convince you to do anything specific. Remember, his mind's already peaceful. It's already joyful. He's just explaining to you how he actually accomplished that. So whenever you're seeing things around moral conduct, he's helping you to be able to see this cause and effect, because as long as you're putting out harmful moral conduct, that harm is going to come back to you. So it's kind of like the wisdom section here. He's helping you to understand, firstly, that this anger and frustration and agitation and all of that is what's causing your mind to be angry. It's your own mind that's causing that. Because oftentimes when you're bitter, harsh, and hostile in your relationships, you almost feel justified, right? You feel like this person made me angry, so now I'm justified in being angry and bitter and harsh to them. But if you understand right view, and you understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, well, now what you got to do is you got to clean up your moral conduct and learn how to not be bitter, harsh, and hostile in your relationships anymore. But why would you ever clean up your moral conduct if you thought that other people are the ones who are causing you to be angry and frustrated? So that's why it starts with this wisdom section as a foundation, and now you're moving into the moral conduct section to be able to clean up the way that you interact with people. It's kind of like the pipe has busted and now there's this oil spewing all over the world. This is your moral conduct, your unwise moral conduct. It's like the oil spewing all over the world. And as long as you keep spewing all that oil all over the world, it's going to make a mess in your life. So you would like to shut down this oil spewing all over the world and get to the point where your moral conduct is wholesome and wise. Because when you do that, now you're going to experience different results. But as long as you keep being bitter, harsh, and hostile in your relationships, as long as you keep having expectations of other people, they're not going to be able to meet your expectations all the time. And now you're going to be frustrated and agitated or annoyed. So he's going to teach you this moral conduct section so you can see this cause and effect relationship between the ways that you choose to conduct yourself with your speech, your actions, and your livelihood. And now when you improve that, you'll see an improvement in your relationships, because it's your life, it's your decisions, and it's your results. And when you make different decisions, you will experience different results. And some of those things that you need to make different decisions about is your moral conduct. You need to improve that. So this first one is right speech, where the Buddha is teaching you how to communicate in ways that is wise. And this is all around helping you eliminate your craving, desires, attachments. So here he says, in what, monks, is right speech? Refraining from lying, refraining from slander, refraining from harsh speech, refraining from frivolous speech. This is called right speech. So again, this is the learning part, but you need to reflect on this. You need to be able to see the truth for yourself. Think about times when you've lied. Did it produce wholesome results for you? Right? People figured out your lies. People were angry about your lying, or people saw you as being undependable or unreliable. And if you've done a lot of lying, you saw that your mind was kind of obsessively trying to figure out, what did you say to one person versus another versus another? So how could you ever get to peace and joy if you're lying, right? Whenever you're lying, there's a craving in there. You want something. And if you tell the truth, you're not going to get it. So the mind lies. Right? So in order to get rid of your craving, desire, attachment, you need to learn how to speak the truth. Slander is like when you're gossiping or damaging someone else's reputation. The mind has a craving to look good in front of other people or to harm this person over here. So the mind thinks that if I can harm this person, then I will look good, right? It's kind of like walking into a dark room and you're holding a candle and someone else is holding a candle. And the mind thinks, well, if I put out their candle, my candle will shine brighter, right? But no, you need two candles in this room. It's going to make the room brighter if there's two candles in the room. No reason to put out someone else's candle. So there's a craving there of, I want to look good, or I want to cause harm to this person. So this is going to help you to eliminate your craving, desire, attachment by eliminating slander. Harsh speech is the same way. There's some craving there. The mind is wanting something. It's expecting something. And when it doesn't get what it wants, it sometimes resorts to harsh speech in order to try to fear other people to do things your way. So when you're being bitter, harsh, and hostile to others, you're just damaging your relationships. You're acting upon craving. Your longing, yearning, your craving is motivating this unskillful conduct. So you're going to need to improve that. Then there's frivolous speech. This is like idle chatter or like unpurposeful, unbeneficial speech. If you or somebody around you has ever done this, it's kind of like yada, 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 a yada, 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 a yada, yada. It's just like continuous talk, like 10, 15, 20 minutes. It's not a conversation. It's like broadcasting. Someone's broadcasting to you or you're broadcasting to them. It's not a real conversation. It's unpurposeful. It's unbeneficial. And it's coming from the mind's craving to just talk, right? You would like to be purposeful and beneficial in the way that you speak. So you're going to need to clean this up where you're not lying, you're not having slander, you're not having harsh speech, and you're not having frivolous speech. And this will produce better results in your day-to-day life because you're not functioning through craving, desire, attachment. But then after you work on that, you would then like to move to the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, because this is where you're really going to be able to improve the way you're interacting with people. The first one is to speak at the proper time, that you speak the truth, speak gentle, speak beneficial, and speak with a mind of loving kindness. Now remember, the Buddha is teaching you the natural laws here. He's not teaching you the rules or commandments. That's not what the Buddha did. He's sharing with you the natural laws of how to interact with people in wise ways. So for example, speaking at the proper time is making sure you don't interrupt people. If you're interrupting people, you don't like it when people interrupt you. So if you go around interrupting people, it's not going to promote harmonious relationships in your day-to-day life. Speaking at the proper time is also making sure your mind is ready to talk. If you're frustrated, if you're agitated, if you're annoyed, not the proper time to talk. If you're angry, the only thing that's going to come out is bitterness and harshness and hostility. And you can see that in your situations in the past, right? So you need to speak when your mind's ready to talk. Then making sure it's the right time for the other person to talk. If they're angry, if they're stressed, if they're frustrated, it's not the proper time to talk. So if you get a letter in the mail that says, hey, you haven't paid your rent this month, and we're going to evict you in 3 days if you don't pay your rent. And now your life partner or your roommate comes home, they're coming home from work. It's not the proper time to talk, to jump on them and start talking about, oh my gosh, we didn't pay our rent. We're going to get kicked out. Right? That's not the proper time. Let them come in, put their bags down, take off their shoes, get some water, get some food, maybe 30 minutes, an hour later. Hey, honey, is this a good time to talk to you about something that's important? And they might say, sure, what do you got? Right? And now you talk to them about it. Or they might say, no, it was a really difficult day at work. Can we talk about this tomorrow? Well, if you don't have a craving, a longing, yearning, you can say, yeah, we'll talk about it tomorrow. No worries. Right? Because you're not going to solve it tonight anyway. So just wait until tomorrow when this person's mind is the proper time for them. Because otherwise, you guys are going to have difficulties in this discussion. So speaking at the proper time is very important. That you're not interrupting, that your mind is ready to talk and their mind is ready to talk. Speaking the truth is the same as we talked about up here, is not lying, making sure that you're always speaking the truth, that you're not just spreading conspiracy theories and innuendo and things that you've heard from other people, but always speaking the truth and what you know to be true that you've actually experienced. Speaking gentle, this is like eliminating the harsh speech. This is where you pay attention to your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. You're going to need to pay attention to this, your tone, your tempo, and your word choice, because each language is different. And depending on how many languages you speak, you're going to need to pay attention to that stuff. In the Thai language, we have all kinds of ways to show that we're speaking gentle. We have words and phrases and prefixes and suffixes to use. We can show politeness, warmth, and gentleness in the Thai language very easily. But maybe in English, you might need to add in a sir or ma'am every once in a while, a thank you, a please, these kinds of things, a sorry, apologize, these kinds of things. You're going to need to learn how to speak gentle, because right now you're probably not speaking gentle in every single conversation that you're in. You're going to need to get to the point where 100% of your conversations are gentle, the way that you interact with people. Then you would like to speak beneficially. This is being clear and concise and precise in the way that you speak. Because if you just like yada, 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 yada with people, that causes them to work really hard to figure out what it is that you're saying. And now you're not going to be very influential. You're not going to be very helpful in your relationships. So you'd like to speak beneficially. Then you'd like to speak with a mind of loving kindness. Loving kindness is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. The opposite of loving kindness would be inner hate. If you're speaking with inner hate, it's not going to go well for you. So you would like to kind of encapsulate everything that you're saying in this loving kindness, that you have this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. So these are the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, but you don't believe it. That was the intellectual learning. Don't believe it. Start reflecting on it. Look at recent conversations that you had problems in, some difficulties or struggles. Look at these 5 factors. You and or the other person missed one of these 5 factors. You weren't practicing it, and somebody else wasn't practicing it, right? These are the natural laws. They're affecting you whether you're aware of it or not. You can see you didn't speak at the proper time. What you said wasn't true, perhaps, or you weren't gentle. You weren't beneficial, or you weren't speaking with a mind of loving kindness. And that's why the conversation didn't go well, right? But now look at the other side, because you've had conversations that have gone well. Look at those conversations. And now look at these 5 factors. You can see you and the other person were doing this. You were speaking at the proper time. What you said was true. It was gentle. It was beneficial. It was with a mind of loving kindness. In that situation, you weren't speaking with these consciously because you didn't even know what they were. But because these natural laws affect you, whether you're aware of it or not, the conversation went really well. But now what you would like to do is consciously start making the effort to practice these more and more in all your conversations. It'll be more challenging in conversations with the people that you have craving, desire, attachment. This is why your life partner, your children, your parents, your siblings, you have the most difficulties in those kinds of relationships because you have craving, you have expectations, you want them to do things a certain way. So you're going to find it the most difficult to talk to them in this way, right? But more and more, I'm going to show you the Eightfold Path where when you get to the mental discipline section, you're going to have the tools that you need to be able to practice the moral conduct and be able to get to the point where you're practicing wise speech. Now, we refer to this as right speech because that was what was taught during the lifetime of the Buddha. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, that's all that existed was speech, right? But nowadays, we might think about this as right communication because we do much more than speak. We have text messages, emails, social media posts. We have all these different kinds of things. And we would like all of our communication to be using right speech. So for example, if you're really angry and you're really frustrated and you go over to your keyboard and you're pounding out an email, it's not the proper time to be communicating, right? Maybe hit save instead of send, right? Don't hit send, right? Save it, come back a few hours later, a few days later, look at that email and decide whether it's wise for you to send this or not. Because it's not the proper time when you're angry and frustrated and you're pounding on your keyboard. If you went into a job interview and you were communicating really well, you might get to the end of the job interview and they think they're going to hire you. They're feeling really good about you. But if they got on your social media and they saw you're being bitter, harsh, and hostile on your social media, they're probably not going to hire you. So this is why you'd like all your communication to be using the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. And what we're talking about doing here is something that we refer to in the Thai language as barami. This is a Thai word. What you're looking to do is establish barami. What barami is that in each individual village, there's a certain group of people, like maybe elders, that people know that these people have barami. What barami means is the one who people listen to. And if you're in a Thai village and you're having difficulties in your life, you might go to the elders and get help. And you ask them questions because everybody knows they're successful. And when I say that they're successful, I don't mean financially successful. I mean they're successful in their relationships. They have really successful relationships. So people in the village know if you're having difficulties, go talk to those people because they have barami. They're the ones who people listen to. They're very influential in the community because people listen to them. They pay attention to them because they know they have deep wisdom, because they have great harmonious relationships. So if you're interested in having not only harmonious relationships, but in being able to be influential and helping people in your community, you're going to need to establish barmi, where you're the one who people listen to. And the way that you do that is you practice the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. As you're practicing these for a long-term period, not just 1 week, not just 1 month, right? Not just 1 year, but over multiple years, you're practicing this in all your different relationships, realizing you will make mistakes, right? You're not going to be able to snap your fingers and instantly practice this. You're going to make mistakes, but each time you're getting better and better and better. Eventually, you're going to establish barami, where you're going to be the one who people listen to, because you're not causing harm through your speech, right? So if you build this into your life, you're going to have more and more relationships that are just going really well for you. And you'll find that things will go really smooth because you're able to talk with people in wise ways. If you can't remember the 5 factors of well-spoken speech in the next few months as you're learning it, you might decide to use this: speaking polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. If you can remember that, speak polite, kind, friendly, and respectful in all situations. There's never a situation where you would like to have a negative relationship, right? Because it doesn't help you in life. So you would like to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. There's no need to be disgruntled and angry and bitter and harsh and have animosity and resentment. That's just causing you harm. So if you can remember to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful, this is what's going to promote the best results in your life. Now, in this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment, the one that I've shared with you guys that is the first book, and it would be wise for you guys to start with this, I go through speech in detail. I go through each one of those factors, and I share a whole lot of content in here, because this is a way that you can really cause a lot of difficulties in your relationships. So you would like to focus in on that. And the book has a lot of details around speech to be able to help you. So here, this is just kind of an encapsulating that, but you're going to see all the details in the book. And one of the things I share in there is about speaking polite, kind, friendly, respectful. But I also go through each one of these factors and all of these, and I explain them in detail so that you can understand it and you can practice it. And you're going to need to revisit this more than one time. Then we've got right action. Right action, this is the words of the Buddha. And what, monks, is right action? Refraining from taking life, refraining from taking what is not given, refraining from sexual misconduct. This is called right action. So what he's talking about here are 3 impactful things that you could do with your bodily actions that would cause harm. And if you cause harm through your bodily actions, this harm is going to come back to you. He's not giving you a comprehensive list, but he is sharing with you 3 very big impactful ones. But then you need to be able to apply this to all other parts of your day and all other parts of your life. So the Buddha didn't say don't walk up to someone and punch them in the face, right? But we can know from right action, if we cause harm through our bodily actions, this harm is going to come back to us. This person's going to either punch us back, or they're going to get out a knife or a gun, or their friends or family is going to come after us because they've got people around them and they're going to come attack us. That's the harm that we're incurring because we caused harm. So even though the Buddha doesn't explicitly say that, you can understand through this factor that if you cause any bodily harm with your body through your actions, this harm is going to come back to you. Notice that he doesn't say, don't walk through the aisle of an airplane and drag your suitcase over people's feet and bump into their knees, right? Because airplanes didn't even exist during his lifetime. But we can understand that that's unwise because it's part of right action, is not causing harm through your bodily actions. So you're going to need to look at the way you navigate the world and the way you interact with the world, that you're not causing harm with your bodily actions. We're going to talk about these 3 in more detail tomorrow when we get to the 5 precepts, because here the Buddha is just talking very generally about these actions, but in the 5 precepts, he really expands it. He gives you much more illuminating language that's going to explain these in more detail for you. Because things like refraining from sexual misconduct, it's like, well, what is sexual misconduct, right? But he's going to explain it to you in detail, where he talks about like having sex with minors, raping people, having sex without consent, going outside of relationships. He's talking about the way you cause harm through your sexual misconduct. So here he's just talking about it generally, but in the 5 precepts, it's much more detail. But I like to give the heads up about this sexual misconduct because sometimes people think that this involves same-gender relationships. And it's important to understand that that's not true, that the Buddha was aware of same-gender relationships during his lifetime, but he never teaches that it is causing harm. Because if there's 2 loyal, loving, consenting adults choosing to have sex, they're not causing harm to anybody. If they're opposite gender or same gender, they're 2 loyal, loving, consenting adults. This is where you can see how wise the Buddha was. 2,500 years ago, he understood that there's no harm with same-gender relationships. Today, we have individuals that don't understand this, and they get angry because they have a certain craving. They want every man or every woman to have sex with the opposite gender, and they want that permanence, and they don't understand. With the universal truth of impermanence, there's never been a time in history where all men had sex with women and all women had sex with men. There's just never been a time in history where that's ever occurred, even 2,500 years ago and beyond, because of impermanence. If everybody had sex with the opposite gender, that would be permanence. But we understand the universal truth of impermanence. So this sexual misconduct doesn't involve same-gender relationships. We're going to talk about it in more detail when we get to that tomorrow in the 5 precepts. But I just like to give you guys a heads up on this. This is referring to your bodily actions and how you cause harm through your bodily actions. But having loyal, loving, consenting sex, there's no harm there. So that's why it doesn't include it here. It's not included here. The Buddha does talk about harm through things like substances that cause heedlessness. That's a bodily action, that if you take substances, that's going to cause harm to your mind. He talks about gambling and things like this, but you're going to learn these at different times. But here, right action is any bodily actions that would cause harm. Here, this is right livelihood. He says, "In what, monks, is right livelihood? Here, monks, the noble disciple, having given up wrong livelihood, keeps himself by right livelihood." Right? So this is just very general and very broad. But then there's other teachings that plug into this. As I shared with you, this is the core central teaching, but then there's other teachings that plug into it. So here is part of this teaching. There's 2 folds of purification here. I'm going to teach you the first fold of purification. He says here that business and weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons would be a wrong livelihood because you're causing harm through your livelihood. Essentially, you're sustaining your life off of causing harm to other beings. And now when you cause that harm is going to come back to you. And again, you can independently verify this, right? You're not believing anything. We can take something like substances that cause heedlessness, and you can see, if I stood on the street corner and I was selling drugs into the community, maybe crystal methamphetamine or heroin, I'm causing harm to the community. Those people are getting addicted to this substance. They're going out and stealing and maybe murdering. They're going out and maybe selling their body in order to get me money. There's all kinds of harm that's occurring in the community because I'm standing on the street corner selling heroin and crystal methamphetamine into the community. Well, now I can very easily get beat up. I can get robbed. I can get murdered. I can get arrested. I can easily get addicted to these substances myself. These are all the harms that are coming to me because I'm choosing to cause harm. But remember, this natural law of karma, it's a natural law that is functioning at all times. It's above and beyond the human laws. And you need to be able to see this because human laws are imperfect. Because you could be in a country where the government won't arrest you for working at a liquor store, for example. You could go be a cashier at a liquor store and they're not going to arrest you. But if you understand the natural law of karma, you'll come to understand that it's unwise to do that because liquor stores are typically where people are getting robbed. Some people get murdered working at these places. At the very least, you're going to be dealing with intoxicated clientele over and over and over again to a certain degree. How could you ever get to peace and joy when you're having to deal with intoxicated clientele coming in to buy liquor every so often? right? And once again, you can get beat up, you can get murdered, all these other kinds of things. So you need to be able to see the natural law as a much higher law. It's not the government laws. The government laws are created by human beings, so therefore they're imperfect. So you're looking at this natural law of karma, of cause and effect, and the Buddha is explaining to you the natural law here. So you could actually go through each one of these and come up with examples, whereas if you did these things, you would be causing harm, and now harm is coming back to you. So the Buddha teaches you that it would be wise to not do any of these 5. Whether you choose to do it or not, it's up to you. You're going to experience the consequences, but he's giving you the wisdom of how to choose a livelihood that doesn't cause harm to other beings. Then he gives you guidance on how to conduct your livelihood in a way that doesn't cause harm to others, because he's interested in seeing you get to a point where your livelihood, that you have enthusiasm, motivation, and encouragement, that it doesn't even feel like work anymore, that you actually enjoy going to do this thing that you're doing each individual day. So he's providing you this guidance of how to perform your livelihood. He talks about scheming, flattering, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. So for example, if I was a politician, it's not one of those 5 livelihoods that you just saw, right? So if I'm making laws or I'm the mayor of a community, I'm not causing any harm by doing that. But if I was scheming and I was corrupt, now I'm causing harm. And now 10, 15 years into my career, people find out that I'm corrupt and I've been scheming. And next thing you know, I can't get elected. And now I have difficulty sustaining my life. This is the harm that's coming to me as a result of my corruption and my scheming. What flattery is this is like insincere comments just to get people to buy things from you. If you've ever been to a store and you walked in and they're like, oh my goodness, that shirt looks so wonderful on you. It really brings out the colors of your eyes. I've got these perfect earrings for you. Come over here. I want to show you these earrings. These are so great, right? You might have felt like, I don't even know if I want to buy anything from this place, right? Because this kind of gives you an icky feeling like this person's kind of smoozing you and flattering you just to get you to buy something, right? So the Buddha is teaching you not to do that. Hinting is like not being clear or precise in the way that you do your work. Like if we were all on a project team and we needed to go brief the boss on what it is that we're doing, we like to be clear, concise, and precise, not hinting around, but clear and direct. And now we'll perform our livelihood better. Belittling is like being degrading and diminishing to your coworkers, to your business partners, maybe about your competition. If you're belittling your competition in front of your customers, they're not going to be interested in purchasing from you. I just had this recent situation about a month ago. I asked these contractors to come in to give me a quote on something for our house. And this one set of contractors, they were belittling and degrading and disparaging about other companies here in Thailand. It wasn't a Thai company, by the way, but it was this foreign company. They were from a different country, a European country, and they were being degrading and diminishing of Thai people and saying how Thai people do this wrong and that wrong, and they were really degrading them. I wasn't interested in doing business with them. And thankfully I didn't, because I ended up finding another contractor that was significantly less money, and they did a phenomenal job. What they did is actually outperforming what everybody thought that it would do. So when people are going around belittling, and you're belittling your business partners, your coworkers, your competition, you're trying to diminish other people in order to make yourself look better, this isn't going to go well for you in your professional environment. Then there's pursuing gain with gain. This is like just chasing after money, that you really don't care about the job, you don't care about the product or the service, all you care about is making money. Well, you'll feel great about that for a little while, like 3 months, 6 months, a year, you're making all this extra money, but eventually your craving is going to diminish and you're going to be unmotivated. You're going to despise this job that you're actually in. You're going to drag yourself to work every day because all you're doing is going there to collect a paycheck. You don't really care about the work. You're not motivated and enthused. You don't have ambition about the work that you're doing. So the Buddha is teaching you to not just take a job for the money. You would like to look at all these other factors whenever you're choosing a particular occupation, not just the money. That's not the thing that should be the primary thing that you look at. So this is how the Buddha is teaching you how to conduct your livelihood, is to eliminate those 5 and then to conduct your livelihood in this way. And if you do this, this is what's called the first fold of purification. There's a second fold of purification as well. This second fold of purification is described in volume 12, chapter 14. If you're in between jobs right now and you're looking to get a new job, or if you're in a job that you don't really particularly care about and you would like to get a new job, I would suggest that you go read that. Volume 12, chapter 14 is where you're going to see all the teachings from the Buddha about how to get to a job and a livelihood that you have enthusiasm about, that you have motivation, that you're encouraged about. Because if you're trying to get to this peaceful and joyful life, but you're going somewhere for 6, 8, 10 hours a day that you despise and you really don't want to be there and you don't enjoy being there, you're not going to be able to get to a peaceful and joyful life, right? So you would like to get to something that you really enjoy doing the work that you do each day. Okay, so this is right livelihood. So here, just a summary on the moral conduct. Right speech is to not cause harm through your verbal conduct, but also understanding that it means communication, because there's verbal communication, there's text, there's chat, there's posts, there's emails. All of this should be harmless so that you can establish parami, practicing those 5 factors of well-spoken speech. First, eliminating the lying, the slander, the harsh speech, and the frivolous speech. But then in more detail, you would like to practice where you're speaking at the proper time. What you say is true, it's gentle, it's beneficial, and it's with a mind of loving kindness. Then you'd like to be working on your actions, ensuring that you're not causing any harm through your bodily actions, because any harm that you cause through your bodily actions is just going to come back to you. And you need to look at all your bodily actions, not just the 3 that the Buddha talks about, but that's just a starting point for you. And then there's your livelihood, making sure that you sustain your life in a way that doesn't cause harm to others. And it's something that you're encouraged about. You have enthusiasm, motivation, and ambition, that you're not having business in weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness and poisons, but also that you're not scheming, flattering, hinting, belittling, or pursuing gain with gain. You would like to eliminate these kinds of things so that you can get to a point where you've purified your livelihood, and then ultimately get to the second fold of purification, where you can have thoroughly enjoy the work that you're doing. By the time you get to your right livelihood, whatever work you're doing, you're getting paid for it, but you just enjoy it so much that you would even do it if you didn't get paid. That's how much you really enjoy the work that you're doing. The fact that you're getting paid for it, that's almost like a bonus, because you enjoy what you're doing so much. And that's what would be your right livelihood. And you're going to need some time to figure out what that is, because oftentimes our mind just chases money, or we might chase a certain title, or we might want to look good to other people. We're trying to do this job just to look good for other people. So you would like to get to a point where you thoroughly enjoy the work that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Do you guys have any questions on the moral conduct? Yep, go ahead. You guys can get mics.
My question would be about right action. What does the Buddha say about the practice of like martial arts? Is that something that is acceptable? Is that something that is not?
Yeah, it's not about the Buddha doesn't teach what is acceptable and what is not. He's helping you to be able to see the natural law, and then you make the decisions for yourself. And I was involved in martial arts at different times too. And what I would share with you on this, because the Buddha doesn't talk about martial arts specifically, but understanding the natural law of karma, what I would share with you is that martial arts is just as much about training the mind as it is the body. And while martial arts are a certain defense to be able to defend yourself, if you were practicing a martial art, there's no harm in that, unless you're using it like in sparring and fighting, and you're actively fighting. What all the best instructors that I ever had, they always told me, I'm teaching you this martial art, but if you learn the martial art really well and you train your mind well, you'll never need the martial art, because there's a whole lot of other things that you're making decisions about before you get into that fight. Right? Like if you've made the decision to go out at midnight or 2 a.m. in the morning, you're at the bar, now there's a fight. now you're having to use your martial art, right? Whereas if you just didn't go out to the bar where there's a lot of people that are drinking and intoxicated, you would have never got in that fight. So there's a whole lot of decisions that an individual is making before they ever need the martial art. So if you're choosing to practice martial arts, I would say practice it, enjoy it if that's something you enjoy, but I would stay away from places that do sparring, where you're actually making contact with people and fighting and hitting people, because now you're actually harming another individual, and this is going to come back to you and harm you. So all the places that I ever learned martial arts at, we never did any sparring. It was just to train our own mind and train our own body, exercise, and this can be really good for your life, and it can be really helpful. And you're still practicing right action in this case, because you're not actually inflicting any harm through your bodily actions. Other questions? Could you use a mic? Otherwise, the people online won't be able to hear.
Regarding the meat business, I just wanted to ask, does that mean that apart from that not being your business, you also shouldn't consume meat?
Consuming meat would be part of right action, which we're going to talk about tomorrow as part of the 5 precepts, but it's not part of right livelihood. Right livelihood is how you choose to sustain your life in terms of your income and things like this. But something like that could be considered part of right action, but we're going to talk about it in more detail tomorrow. Mm-hmm. What's that? This one? Yeah. By the way, all these slides are on our website. If you go to buddhadailywisdom.com, there's a button that you can click free books, and down towards the bottom, you'll see all these in PDF format. You're welcome to take any and all pictures that you like, but in case you'd like a clean copy, it's right there for you guys.
My question is that what if my interesting cannot earn money? For example, I like drawing, writing, listen story, but it cannot make money. It cannot for a job. So I have to get a job for earn money that I don't like. Mm-hmm. That should I do this?
You can make money from drawing and writing. It's possible to do that. There's plenty of people in the world that do that. It's just not that you're not going to be making maybe as much money as you want right now, right? There's plenty of people that make money in all different levels of amount of money, but you maybe don't have the wisdom to see how to actually do that right now. So if you hold on to this job where you're just making money and you don't like it, you're not going to be able to get to enlightenment that way, because you're not going to be peaceful and joyful. So if what you really enjoy is drawing and writing, you need to learn through wisdom of how to make wise decisions to move towards this and find a way to make a living out of doing what you enjoy. That's what right livelihood is going to help you to be able to do. Right now, you're not seeing how to do that, but over time, you can gradually figure out how to do that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome.
So I got 2 questions. The first question is, in Thailand, marijuana is legal. Mm-hmm. So like if I have a shop that sells marijuana, it's the people who make the choice to come in the shop, buy it. Mm-hmm. So would it still consider wrong livelihood? Because I'm just selling. People decide to come. So it's their responsibility.
What the Buddha is teaching you is the decisions that you're making that is leading to any particular results in your life. It's not about what you're describing. What you're describing, it would be wrong view, that everybody else is choosing to buy this heroin from me. It's not me that's causing the problem. They're the ones who are choosing to buy heroin from me, right? So it's about your decisions that you're making. So recently, in the last year or so, there's a lot of marijuana shops here in Thailand, but we're going to talk about marijuana tomorrow as well, because marijuana can be used in some cases for help, and it can actually serve a medical purpose. but then it can also be used for heedlessness as well. So I'm going to explain to you guys all the details about this. But in terms of right livelihood, it's about your decisions that you're making. I wouldn't choose to have a marijuana shop. If someone else chooses to do that, that's their choice, but then they're going to experience the results of that based on what they're choosing to do. So it's not about what other people are choosing to do. It's about what you're choosing to do.
Okay, I got it. So the second question is I run e-commerce. So when you run e-commerce, so you need to meet sales target. So one of the way to meet sales target is encourage consumerism. So that's why, so you need to encourage people to buy stuff. My question is, so I don't really agree with buying a lot of clothes, but then my job is to encourage people to buy clothes from me so that I will reach my sales target. So that's why I always have very conflicting view about this, whether I should continue or not.
Yeah, when someone's doing marketing, all you're doing is helping people understand what it is that you're offering. If they choose to purchase it or not, that's a choice that they're making. All you're doing is advertising a car or a motorcycle or clothing or food. If someone chooses to purchase it or not, that's a choice that they're making. You're not forcing them to make that choice. You're just using marketing and advertising to let people know what it is that you're actually offering. So there's no harm in choosing to make available products and services that you're offering. And then it's up to that person to decide for themselves whether this is something that they would like to actually purchase or not. And if that person has craving, desire, attachment, they might purchase in situations where it would be unwise for them to purchase, but that's a decision they're making. You're not making that decision. Your decision is, I'm going to advertise my product or service, get it out there and let people know that this is what I'm offering. And then if they choose to purchase it, it's them that's making that choice, not you. So again, this comes back to the same thing we were just talking about, which is it's about your own individual choices. It's not about other people's choices.
But actually in marketing, in order for them to make a purchase, you need to tempt them to purchase it.
You can't tempt me to buy anything. If I'm going to buy it, then I'm going to buy it. Doesn't matter what you show me, what you tell me. I'm not going to buy it unless I'm interested in, and I need that particular thing. Right? So it's my choice of whether to buy or not. All right. So now let's move on to the mental discipline section, because you wouldn't be able to actually practice the moral conduct section without the mental discipline section. You're not like mastering one step before you move to the next. You're actually working on all 8 of these at the same time, because things like right speech, where you're working to eliminate harsh speech, you wouldn't be able to do that if you didn't have a disciplined mind. You need to be able to control your mind. So now we're going to move into right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, because this is what's going to bring together the ability for you to now practice things like right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And it's all based on this wisdom section, right? You wouldn't be able to practice moral conduct and mental discipline without the wisdom section. So all of these are actually working together. Okay, so now we've got right effort. I'm going to read this to you because this is the words of the Buddha, and then I'm going to teach it to you. He says, "In what, monks, is right effort? Here, monks, a monk rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to prevent the arising of unarisen, evil, unwholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to overcome evil, unwholesome mental states that have arisen. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to produce unarisen, wholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not to let them fade away, to bring them to greater growth, to the full perfection of development. This is called right effort." So here he's talking about 4 things, 4 things that you need to apply effort to actually accomplish. And what I've done here is I've broken it down for you, and I'm going to give you some examples so you can see how to apply it in day-to-day life. What he's talking about is preventing unwholesome mental states from arising. He's talking about abandoning certain unwholesome mental states that are actually in the mind. He's talking about producing or bringing into the mind wholesome mental states that are not currently there. And then he's talking about supporting and encouraging and maintaining wholesome mental states that are currently in your mind, not allowing them to fade away, bring them to full growth and full perfection. So for example, the first one, preventing unwholesome mental states that have not arisen from arising in the mind. These are unwholesome mental states that are not currently in your mind. And for example, there might be killing a human being. You probably have no interest in killing a human being right now. That's probably the farthest thing from your mind. It's outside your mind. And the Buddha is saying, apply the effort to prevent this from ever coming in your mind. And there's other unwholesome things that are not currently in your mind right now, and you would like to prevent those from ever coming into your mind. Then there's abandon unwholesome mental states that have arisen in the mind. There are certain unwholesome mental states that you currently have in your mind because it's unenlightened. And when you see those unwholesome mental states arising, the Buddha is saying apply the effort to eliminate those out of your mind. So some examples might be if you're in an existing relationship and you had a craving to go outside that relationship, you would like to apply the effort to eliminate that out of the mind, because that's going to cause you harm and cause your partner harm. And now it's going to cause difficulties in your life. It would be better to end that relationship and then go out and actually be with another partner if that's what you're choosing to do, right? So if you had a craving to go outside this relationship and you actually acted upon it, that's going to cause harm. So you would like to eliminate that by applying right effort to cut it out and eliminate it from the mind. Then something like anger, frustration, or irritation. When you're noticing that arise in the mind, that's an unwholesome mental state. You would like to apply the effort to eliminate that out of the mind. Then there's produce unarisen wholesome mental states to arise in the mind. There's certain wholesome mental states that you're going to need in order to get to enlightenment, and they're not currently in your mind right now. They're outside your mind. Something like generosity. Generosity is the giving and sharing of more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return. Sharing your time, your effort, your energy, and your resources. You're going to need to practice this because it trains your mind to let go and eliminate your craving, desire, attachment. Because with craving, desire, attachment, you'll be pretty selfish and you'll hold on to things very tightly. But if you can practice generosity where you're giving and sharing, this is going to help train your mind to let go. Well, if you know that you're somewhat of a selfish person, you find it very challenging to share, this is a wholesome quality that you're going to need to apply the effort to bring into the mind, because you're not going to be able to get to enlightenment without being generous. Then there's something like compassion. Compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others. The opposite of that would be indifference, where you could care less what happens to other people. Right? Well, if you know that you don't have compassion in your mind, you're going to need to apply the effort to bring this into the mind, where you have concern about the misfortune of others. You're not worried, you don't have anxiety, but you're also not indifferent either, that you have this concern, right? Whether you act upon it or not is up to you, right? So compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others. And if you don't currently have this wholesome quality in your mind, you're going to need to apply the effort to bring this into the mind. Then there's maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not allowing them to fade away, and work to increase their growth in the mind, bringing them to full perfection and full development. An example might be loving kindness. Loving kindness is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. You probably have loving kindness in your mind to a certain extent. You probably have loving kindness for other beings. Where you're like, you like to see this person be well, right? But then in other cases, you don't have loving kindness. You're angry. You're frustrated, you're irritated, you're annoyed, you're bitter, you're harsh, you're hostile perhaps. That's because your loving kindness hasn't been brought to full growth, full perfection, and full development. So you're going to need to apply the effort to really rise that up in the mind and really envelop the mind with this loving kindness, where you can be loving and kind with all beings in the world. So you're going to need to apply the effort to maintain this mental state and bring it to full growth and full perfection and full development. Sympathetic joy. This is joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. The opposite of this would be like jealousy or envy. And you might have sympathetic joy in your mind to a certain extent. Like someone's like, hey, I'm going to take this holiday to Thailand. And you're like, oh, that's great. I've been to Thailand. You're going to really like it over there. There's some really great mango and sticky rice. There's some great massages. Go enjoy that. Have a good time, right? You're like joyful for their success. But now you're at work and you are applying for a promotion, and your colleague, your coworker is applying for that same promotion, and they get the job instead of you. And now you're jealous. Now you're envious. That's because your sympathetic joy hasn't been brought to full growth, full perfection, and full development. So you're going to need to apply the effort in this situation to bring up that sympathetic joy, where you have joy for their success, even if you didn't contribute to it. Right? So these are different examples that I'm sharing with you to understand how to apply right effort. That you would like to prevent unwholesome mental states from arising in the mind. You would like to eliminate unwholesome mental states that are currently in your mind. You would like to bring in certain wholesome mental states that are not currently in your mind. And you would like to support and encourage and maintain wholesome mental states that are currently in your mind. The way that I taught this to my young son is kick out the unwholesome stuff and bring in the wholesome stuff. That's what you're looking to do. So this is right effort. These are just examples. What's wholesome and unwholesome in your mind is going to be unique to you. These are just examples to help you understand how to apply this. So this is right effort. You're applying the effort to do these things. Then there's right mindfulness. Again, I'm going to read it to you and then I'll teach it to you. He says, in what, monks, is right mindfulness? Here, monks, a monk resides reflecting on body as body, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on feelings as feelings, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mind as mind, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mental objects as mental objects, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. This is called right mindfulness. So he's talking about four things here. These are referred to as the four foundations of mindfulness. But before we talk about those, let's just talk about mindfulness in general. Mindfulness in general, you can think about it as awareness of mind. That you'd like to have awareness of the mind, your thoughts, your ideas, your feelings. How could you ever apply right effort if you didn't have right mindfulness? Right? You need to be aware of the unwholesome qualities and the wholesome qualities that are in your mind so you can then apply right effort. So right mindfulness is being aware of what's going on within your own mind. And you need to be aware that some people use this word today in ways that the Buddha didn't use it. You might have somebody say, can you mindfully carry this glass of water to that table? Right? What they're really saying is, can you carefully carry this glass of water to that table? That's not the way that the Buddha used it. Whether they use it that way or not, that's up to them. But if you would like to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to understand this word in the way that the Buddha used it. He's using it as awareness of mind. You're going to need to have awareness of your wholesome qualities and your unwholesome qualities, because you're going to need to apply right effort to cut off and let go of the unwholesome and to arise the wholesome within your own mind. And you wouldn't be able to do that without awareness of the mind or mindfulness. But then as you develop that for a few months, where you're developing awareness of the mind, you're going to then need to develop the four foundations of mindfulness. This is being aware of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. What he's talking about with bodily sensations is that prior to your mind becoming angry or frustrated or irritated or any other discontent feeling, there's bodily sensations that are occurring that you may or may not even be aware of right now. If you're about to get angry, there's this preliminary warning system that you have that there's going to be bodily sensations alerting you, hey, you're about to get angry. You're about to get frustrated. You're going to notice tingling in the body, tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. This is an early warning system alerting you. Hey, you're about to get angry. You're about to get frustrated. You're about to get agitated or annoyed. And what you would like to do with that mindfulness, when you notice that bodily sensation coming, is you would like to apply right effort to cut it off and let it go. Cut that off and let it go. Don't allow the mind to experience that anger, that conditioned feeling. So essentially your mind's like, I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. And you say, nope, not going to let you do that. Not going to let you form your feelings based on that thing. Not going to let you do that. And over time, if you do this, your mind eventually won't have any anger. There won't be a rising of any anger because you've trained it not to form its inner feelings based on this condition. It's kind of like trying to prevent the water from ever coming into your boat. Because once the water comes into your boat, you have a real issue to deal with. You got to get this water out of your boat. So if I'm going from Indonesia to Australia in a boat and I'm out in the middle of the ocean, if this water starts flooding in, I've got a real problem to deal with. So if you let the anger come into your mind, you've got a real problem to deal with. So you're cutting off and letting go before this anger arises in the mind. You're not suppressing your feelings. Sometimes people think that's the case when I'm describing this. You're not suppressing them. What you're doing is you're eliminating them before it becomes a feeling. You're not even letting the mind experience that anger and frustration. You're cutting it off as a bodily sensation. And that's what you would like to be able to do more and more and more. Catch it as a bodily sensation. But of course, you're not going to be able to do that right away, right? You're not going to be able to just walk out of here and instantly do this. So sometimes it's going to pass through the bodily sensations and it's going to become a feeling. Now your mind's angry. Now you're frustrated. Now you're agitated. So cut it off and let it go there as a feeling. If you don't cut it off and let it go there, it's going to affect the condition of your mind. This is where you've been angry or frustrated for like a day or two, or an hour or two, or a week or two. Have you ever been agitated for a week or two? Of course you have, right? All of you have. All of us have at some point, right? You didn't understand this. There was a bodily sensation. You didn't cut it off there. It became a feeling. You didn't cut it off there. And now for an hour or two, a day or two, a week or two, you're generally grumpy and irritable and frustrated, right? And what you're trying to do is get way ahead of that curve and cut it off and let it go. Because if you don't, it's then going to form what's called a mental object. A mental object is a deeply rooted container that's in the mind that, in this example, is ill will. Like right now, you're not angry, you're not frustrated, you're not agitated, right? But inside your mind, you have a deeply rooted container of ill will. If somebody does something and triggers one of your cravings, that ill will is going to arise. That's because of the mental object. When we were born, we didn't have ill will in our mind. When we went into the nursery at the hospital, we didn't hate other babies, right? We didn't look at other babies and hate them, right? But over time, we accumulated this ill will in the mind because as we were aging as a child, we had certain cravings of things that we wanted. And when we got what we wanted, we got happy. And then when we didn't get what we want, we got angry and frustrated. And more, we blamed the outside world. We thought it was mom and dad that were making us angry. We experienced the bodily sensations, the feelings. It affected the condition of our mind. And we formed this mental object of ill will. And now it's just a matter of time before that rises up in your mind. If somebody is around you and you experience contact and now one of your cravings get triggered, your ill will is going to arise. So what the Buddha is teaching you is this process, this life cycle that discontentedness is taking, that it's going to first become a bodily sensation, it's then going to be a feeling, it's then going to affect the condition of your mind, and it's then going to feed these mental objects. And what you would like to do is put a roadblock at the bodily sensations and not allow it to come past that and cut off and cut off and cut off and cut off. But it's going to take you a good long while to build up the ability to be able to catch it every single time as a bodily sensation. Between now and enlightenment, you're going to experience some conditioned feelings. You're going to get happy and excited and elated, conditioned feelings. You're going to get angry and frustrated and sad and these other discontent feelings. But more and more, when you're practicing these teachings, you'll be able to catch it as a bodily sensation, and you'll essentially transform your mind where there's no arising of any anger. There's no arising of any resentment or hostility. There's no arising of guilt or shame or stress or anxiety or anything, because you've eliminated the causes and conditions that are producing it. So the mindfulness is so important to be able to help you to be able to see what's going on in the mind, so you can observe and know whether you're happy, you're sad, you're frustrated, you're angry, you're irritated. Any of these wholesome or unwholesome qualities, you're going to need to be aware of them. And it's your mindfulness that's going to help you to do that. So you might start out with just awareness of mind, and you might just be working on that. But then more and more, you're going to need to build the awareness of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, where you can notice those bodily sensations, cutting it off, letting it go there. Because if you don't, it's going to become a feeling. And if you don't cut it off there, it's going to start to affect the condition of the mind, and it's going to form a mental object. So now let me explain to you how this works in day-to-day life. I'm going to give you an example. Say you're sitting there on the sofa and you're watching the news. When you're watching the news, you're having this contact through the eyes and through the ears, and it's triggering one of your cravings, and you're noticing this frustration as a bodily sensation. Well, what you would do here is you would cut off the news and get up and go for a walk. That's applying right effort to cut it off and let it go. No need to sit there and dwell in that anger and frustration. Get up and go wash your hands, go to the bathroom, go get a drink from the kitchen, right? Go out for a bike ride, go do something else. No need to just sit there and let the mind stay wired that way, where you keep experiencing frustration, agitation, and annoyance. So cut it off and let it go by redirecting the mind to go do something else. This is how it can look in day-to-day life, is redirect the mind to something else. Over time, you'll be able to internally cut it off within your own mind. But at this early stage like this, you might have to physically get up and remove yourself from the situation where you go out for a walk or you go for a bike ride. Just turn it off. Don't need it, right? No need to sit there and let your mind dwell in that anger and frustration. Okay, so this is right mindfulness, and that's going to help you to apply right effort. You wouldn't be able to apply right effort unless you had right mindfulness. But you wouldn't be able to have right mindfulness without right concentration. So now I'm going to teach you right concentration. But I'm not going to read this, because what the Buddha is describing here is he's describing these 4 preliminary phases that your mind goes through on your way to the first stage of enlightenment. These are referred to as the jhanas. This is basically enhanced qualities of mind that you're experiencing as a result of having put together the entire Eightfold Path. When you put together the entire Eightfold Path, you're going to start experiencing these enhanced qualities of mind. And I teach these in other programs, but here in the foundational program, I don't teach you what the jhanas are in detail, because you're going to need to practice the Eightfold Path in detail before you actually experience these. So no need to really learn these now. Instead, what I teach you is how to practice right concentration. He's explaining to you the results of having practiced the Eightfold Path. So now I'm going to explain to you what the Buddha shares in other teachings, that is, how to practice right concentration. So the way you practice right concentration is you develop a daily meditation practice, and you practice singleness of mind in day-to-day life. This is how you practice right concentration. What your daily meditation practice is you practice breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. That's why this afternoon I'm going to be teaching you breathing mindfulness meditation in detail, because you need this on a day-to-day basis to develop your awareness of mind and the ability to cut things off and let it go. Because you wouldn't be able to apply right mindfulness and right effort if you weren't practicing breathing mindfulness meditation. That's what's training your mind to cut off and let go. cut off and let go. So now when your anger is arising, you can see it with your mindfulness. And then if you've been practicing breathing mindfulness meditation regularly, you can cut it off and let it go. So that practice of breathing mindfulness meditation is like taking your mind to the gym and exercising the mind. So you have the qualities of right concentration, right mindfulness, and you can apply right effort in your day-to-day life. You would like to build up your meditation practice where you're practicing 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes or more. This can sound like a lot to somebody who's just getting started, but that's probably because you have a lot of things that you're doing right now that might be unbeneficial for you. If you're searching social media or YouTube channels a lot, you're spending 3, 4, 5, 6 hours a day doing that kind of stuff. Well, if you throttle that back to maybe 30 minutes or an hour, you'd actually have a lot more time in your day-to-day life. So you're going to need to build up your practice, but sometimes it takes 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up to that. So you're not in a race with anyone. You're not in a competition with anyone, but slowly but surely you like to build up your meditation practice where you're practicing 2 or 3 sessions for 30 minutes or more. And we're going to talk about this more this afternoon. So there's 4 total meditations where the main one that you're focusing on in this class is the breathing mindfulness, because that's the foundation. Then you would like to also be practicing what's called singleness of mind. What singleness of mind is where you're doing just one thing at a time. You might have been taught to multitask. Your mind can't actually multitask. This is a big misunderstanding in the world. This wasn't a thing until about the 1960s when computers came out. Computer chips can multitask because they have multiple processors, but the human mind can't. It can only do one thing at a time. What you're actually doing when you're multitasking is you're doing one thing for 5, 6, 8 seconds, and then you're rapidly cycling to another thing for 5, 6, 8, 10, 12 seconds, and then you're rapidly cycling to another thing for 5, 6, 8, 10 seconds. If you do this for 6, 8, 10 hours a day, it's like a racehorse running around a track. And then when the racehorse goes into the barn, it can't calm down. If you've ever seen a racehorse in the barn, it's hyped up. It can't calm down. And your mind is the same way. If you take your mind to work 8, 10, 12 hours a day and you're racing around the track, when you come home after work, you probably find that it's quite stressful, that you have a lot of anxiety circulating in your mind, and you might have difficulty sleeping and things like this. So if you train your mind to do one thing at a time, you can bring forth your full wisdom to practice all these teachings in each situation. Whereas if you were talking on your phone to your mom, you were watching TV, and you were eating a sandwich, you're not actually doing all 3 of these things at one time. You're talking to your mom for a little bit, you're watching TV for a little bit, and you're eating your sandwich for a little bit. And now you're talking to your mom a little bit, you're watching TV a little bit, you're eating your sandwich a little bit. And now this conversation that could have been 10, 15 minutes, it actually lasted 45 minutes or an hour. And then when you are on the conversation, you might have said things that you actually regretted because you didn't actually have your full wisdom to use right speech. And now maybe mom asked you to do a couple of things and you agreed to it, and you get off the phone and you can't even remember what it is that you agreed to. And you got to call her back and you got to say, Mom, I'm so sorry. I was bitter and harsh with you. I didn't mean to do that. I'm really sorry. What was that I agreed to do for you, by the way? Right? So you think you're actually saving time by talking on the phone, watching TV and eating a sandwich, but you're actually elongating the conversation. You're having to damage this relationship that you got to go back and clean up. You got to go talk to mom and find out, what is it that I agreed to do now? I can't even remember, right? So you're actually wasting more time. Whereas if you just had your 10-minute conversation, brought your full focus to the conversation, and it's done and over with, and you're off to the next thing. So the way that this looks is that, say you're in day-to-day life and you're in a business meeting. And now when you're in that business meeting, you're thinking about this holiday to Thailand. And you're like, I just can't wait to get out of this office. Man, I just can't wait to get to Thailand. It's like 3 to 6 months before your flight, and your mind is just wandering, thinking about Thailand. Cut that off and let it go. Bring the mind back to the business meeting, right? You need to focus on the business meeting and put forth all your full wisdom so you can perform well in the business meeting. Don't let the mind wander. Or you're washing dishes. But now you're washing dishes and your mind's wandering, right? Well, now you slip and you cut your hand with a knife. Now you got to go to the hospital, right? And gosh, you got extra expense, you got extra time, you got to take these medications, you can't do all the things you enjoy. So just focus on washing the dishes. You see your mind wandering? cut that off and let it go. Bring the mind back, right? So what we're talking about here, an analogy that we could use is, say you have a piece of wood and you have a steel rod and you grinded this steel rod back and forth on the wood. When you first start doing this, the steel rod's going to bounce around a lot because there's not a groove here yet. But if you grind that steel rod back and forth enough, eventually you're going to get a nice little groove going. And when that steel rod pops out, you're going to know that it's popped out and you're going to be able to bring it back to that groove. But eventually, if you get this groove deep enough, the steel rod's never going to pop out. You'll just be focused and concentrated and have clear mind all the time because you've got this nice groove that the mind's in. But if you keep allowing the mind to bounce around all the time, it's never going to learn to be focused. So if you're in a class like this and I'm talking and you're looking at the clock and it's like, hey, it's 12 o'clock. He hasn't even gone to lunch yet. Like, I thought we were going to go to lunch at 12 o'clock. You're like, no, cut that off. Let me focus on the conversation. Let me understand what it is that we're learning in class, right? So you like to cut those things off, bring the mind back to whatever it is that you're focused on. And if you do this, eventually, at the beginning, your mind's going to be bouncing around a lot, but eventually you're going to get this nice groove and your mind's just always going to be focused and concentrated and clear. And that's what you need to be able to do, is train your mind to do that, starting with your meditation by focusing on the breath. And whenever your mind moves off, you cut that off and let it go. But then in your day-to-day life, you just do one thing at a time. Anytime you see your mind wandering, cut that off, bring your mind back. And more, your mind will get focused and concentrated. Okay, so this is right concentration. So here's just a little summary, and then I'll see what questions you guys have. Right effort is to take initiative to eliminate unwholesome aspects of the mind and cultivate wholesome qualities in the mind. You need to apply the effort to eliminate the unwholesome and bring in the wholesome, applying the effort to do that. Right mindfulness is having awareness of mind, but more specifically, the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Being aware of the bodily sensations, that early warning system alerting you that your mind's about to get angry. Being aware of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. Then there's right concentration. Practice of meditation and developing singleness of mind. And you're going to eventually start experiencing what's called the jhanas, which are preliminary phases that the mind goes through where there's enhanced qualities of mind. And you'll learn about these later, but you need to first put together the Eightfold Path. And your mind's going to start experiencing these enhanced qualities of the jhanas. And then ultimately your mind will be moving through the 4 stages of enlightenment. Okay, so any questions on the mental discipline section?
You mentioned that when we are in, when we are in the, when we realize that the unpleasant sensations come up, you need to cut it off by physically taking yourself away from that situation. So, but then, for example, in business meeting or in a lot of situations, you can't actually get yourself physically away from the meeting. So what can I do if you have a heated conversation at that time?
Sure, you can. You can always get away. If you're in a business meeting and it's getting heated, you can say, I'm so sorry, I need to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. And you just excuse yourself to the bathroom. And you go to the bathroom and you wash your hands, you take your time, 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever it is that you need, you take your time in the bathroom. If you're in a conversation with a life partner and you're noticing the anger starting to arise, hey, I'm so sorry, this isn't the proper time to talk, I'm going to step away. And then you just go step away. You go do something else. Or you don't even have to say anything. You can just step away. And more, what people realize is if they're interested in talking to you, they're going to need to be calm. Right? Because if every time your life partner is being bitter, harsh, and hostile, and you're bitter, harsh, and hostile right back, it's just fireworks. You guys are just going to keep arguing all the time. But when your life partner starts to be bitter, harsh, and hostile with you, if you choose to walk away, this person might get angrier when you do that, but that's their craving, desire, attachment. You're not causing that. Their mind's causing it itself. But over time, you do that 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 times, they're going to realize if I'm interested in talking to her, I'm going to need to be calm because every time I get angry, she walks away from me. And this is going to be very good practice for you and for them. And it's going to help your relationship to become more healthy.
You talk about mental objects. I assume that there's a way to remove these, to purge your mind of these mental objects that have been sort of established and rooted.
Yes, that's what you're actually doing. Is the mental objects are those 10 fetters. So the ill will, the sensual desire, the conceit, the arrogance, the pride. So all the tools that the Buddha is giving you is to help you eliminate these mental objects. But what you're doing is you're putting a blockade at the bodily sensations and no longer feeding those mental objects. So more and more, if you get that blockade at the bodily sensations, cutting off and cutting off and cutting off, but then you're using all the tools and techniques to uproot those mental objects and purify the mind of those mental objects. That's what we mean by purification of the mind. You're eradicating these mental objects out of the mind because they're not permanent. They are impermanent. Okay, so what I'm going to do is pause here for our afternoon break, for our lunch break. It's 12:30. Would you guys be able to take an hour and 15-minute lunch break today instead of hour and a half? Anybody attached to an hour and a half? Anyone craving it? Anyone going to get upset or angry if you don't have an hour and a half? No? See? You guys independently verified the Four Noble Truths. Right? That when you don't have a craving, desire, attachment, there's no discontentedness. You can see it, right? Right there. All right. So an hour and 15 minutes from now would be 1:45. Let's come back at 1:45. And from there, I'm going to teach you meditation, and then we're going to actually do it together. So enjoy your lunch, and thank you for your questions. Thank you for your interest to learn. And I'll see you guys in about an hour and 15 minutes. Okay? Yep. Thank you. Thank you for the claps.